How's it going, everybody? It's Miss Mag here, bringing you power rankings for Week 0 of the TGR's Mythical Mayhem format. And as you can see by the cover, we have a lot of Mythicals and a lot of Mayhem. So all the Legendaries are coming back out to play in this format, and it's going to be crazy. This format has just power level going through the roof. With me today are my two lovely co-hosts, Matrix, say hello.
Yo guys, it's Matrix here.
And I've got Ted as well.
Hello, I'm Ted.
Alright, and we're just basically going to go through the teams, we're going to talk about them, say what we like, say what we don't like, and then we'll have some tier list pictures from all three of us at the end, and you can kind of see where amongst the three hosts, how we view your team relative to everyone else. I will say that before we begin, when we do get to the tier list portion of the video, the teams are not arranged in order of preference. They are simply grouped within the tiers that each one of us thought was appropriate. And we are doing our best to net take coach skill into account for this, since a lot of us are very familiar with many of the coaches. With that being said, do you gents have anything else to say before we start?
Yeah. When we made the tier lists, the tier list rankings, it doesn't bring into account what we may end up discussing in this draft review, and thus our opinions may change slightly as we discuss and influence each other of each other's opinions of the teams. So it's an evolution, you know. Opinions change. It's not a set in stone tier list. Just put it out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what we're here for. So make sure that, it's never just about it staying one way. And I don't also think that a tier list ranking is always super indicative of performance. Alright, I think we've stalled long enough. Let's get into the power rankings. Alright, up first, it's going to be the Supernova Jirachi. They had first pick. Oh, I did not mention this during the intro, but these are shown in draft order. So the first team you see had the first pick, second had the second pick, etc., etc. So this is Kev's team. Which one of you would like to start?
I guess I'll go first.
Go for it.
So, the main portion of his team that I really like is especially that Calyrex mode with Meowstic Male. Prankster Psychic Drain is really scary because the only way to really stop it is Fake Out before it gets it off, but it can always run Cover Cloak and just, immediately negate that and get that Psychic Drain up for expanding Force on Calyrex, which is really, really scary to deal with if you don't have a Dark type or Wide Guard. Lander C, always really good in this format. Intimidate, U-Turn, Terra Flying, Terra Blast, Earthquakes, stuff like that is really good in this format. And then Enamorous Incarnate with the introduction of the Stellar typing in the DLC Part 2 is really strong with Contrary because running Terra Blast with Stellar allows it to boost its attack and special attack, so you can run either like a mix set or you can specifically go for the attacking set or a special attacking set. So I think with that is really strong. And then Dialga Origin, I guess is another one I need to respect because this is legendary. It is quite I'm pretty sure it has to run the item, so you're kind of stuck with that. But it's really strong offensively. It's a strong special attacker, so having that next to Calyrex is nice. Strong support as well. It can run Trick Room and all those good supporting stuff. So obviously, like those first 5 mons are really strong, but after that, it kind of drops off. I guess I'll let Matrix take it away from here.
Yeah, no. As you say, like those first 3 mons are really strong, but you've got essentially a load of non-mons in Bagon, Sheldon, which even some of the other 1-pointers might have done a little bit more. I do think Ditto does provide something in such a high-tier format. It means that you could potentially be getting a third restricted onto your team, but it could also mean you get something completely wasted, depending on how the opponent plays around the Ditto. The Sentret's really cool. It's definitely suffering from a follow me tax in the fact that it's a 4-point mon, which is literally just there to follow me and hold focus sash. It does get super fang, so if it does get a chance to attack with its base 30 odd speed, then great. It's able to half your opponent's health. It's got some help in hand utility, so it's not a complete waste. I do think Electrode is actually the strongest of those bottom 5 mons, just because of its speed and some utility. But the problem is that, yeah, it's fast, but you've also already got Calyrex Shadow on the team, which is fast. You've also already got Prankster, which is fast. So, like, you've got a really fast Electrode, and one of the best things about Electrode is forcing your opponents to trying to increase their speeds a little bit just to try and keep up with Electrode or force a Scarf Mom, but they're already having to do that because you've got Calyrex Shadow. And you've already got those really fast priority options with Meowstic. So I do feel Meowstic's a really good glue to the team, really well supports the contrary, as you say, with the Lamerus. The Landorus is a good pivot mom, got some good high physical attack, and the Dialga, although restricted with its item choice, I do like Dialga's restricted. It's got Trick Ring reversal options, it's really high base stats all around. It's not just like a one-trick pony, no pun intended for the Calyrex. But yeah, that's basically the gist of it. I don't know about you, Miss Mag.
Yeah, I mean, it's a one-trick pony, but it's like a really strong one-trick pony because Ashabara is just stupidly high base power and a very strong offensive typing that it's hard for me to ignore, like, just how fundamentally strong, I should say, this team is. Even though I would say its biggest weak point is not having enough offense on the physical side. Like, yeah, Lando's there, and like Lando is physical offense, and you can run like Contrary, Superpower, and Amorous, but outside of that, like, physical offense looks grim. So stuff like Snarls and Assault Vest will prove to be very potent. But then you also have to keep in mind that they're one of their mons that they can use in a very unique way is that Ditto, almost in some ways giving them like a third restricted in this format. So I think this is actually a really strong team, despite the fact that it has, I would say, 3 baby mons on it for sure.
It's definitely up there as like a really strong team, and this is one of the few teams that I think really takes the approach of drafting super top heavy. Like, we already know the points, and this is going to be a repeating theme within the draft, within this draft review, that a lot of teams were hard shafted by the very tight point restrictions. So you will naturally get those really high powered top level, like, you know, the top half of the drafts, and then it starts to trail off. But I do think this is an example of one of the more extreme cases where you've got really just 5 mons which are going to be brought every week, and then kind of just limited to just like maybe Electrode or maybe Ditto, which is going to see most of the usage, and you might find a week where Centric comes. But otherwise, yeah, so it's basically, that's one of the biggest weakness points of this team. Even though all the teams are restricted, it just seems to affect this one the most.
Alright, I think with that being said, let's move on to our second team in the draft order, the Villa Blanca Volcanoes. This is Mario's team. I'll just jump in on this one. So I really like the restricted pairing he chose. Hiram Black and Necrozma Dawnwings are 2 Pokemon I would have never thought to even consider a pairing together. But you just have like a really fundamentally strong physical attacker and a very strong special attacker on the team, and that's just like a lot of damage. And then you drop some nice supportive pieces around it. You have the Pavilion with like Tailwind, Sleep Powder, Redirection. You have Iron Hands, which is not a support piece, but it's just another like physically offensive threat. You have the combo with the coughing and the slacking down there at the bottom, turn off the abilities, so Truant. You even have just Charizard, just even without like any Sun synergy, like Charizard still just hits very hard with fire moves. And then the Woe Chain is kind of cute. I actually like it on this team because everything there is already having a pretty, even the physical mons have like a really strong attack score that the Tablets of Ruin is not actually inhibiting them that much. And this team kind of needed like a little bit of a defensive pivot anyway, since there's just so many offensive options. Toxapex kind of fills that same role, but it's a little bit more limited in terms of like matchups I would say it can come to. And then there's Flittle. Flittle does stuff. I'll pass it over to Ted.
Yeah, I think in my own like rankings of each team, this is probably one of my favorite ones. I really like the restricted pairing with Karen Black and Dawn Wings. I think Dawn Wings with like its ability is really good defensively. Not taking those super. You're still taking super effective damage, but not as much with its ability. Obviously, Iron Hands is a good supporting cast role with Fake Out. It doesn't have to be purely offensive. You can afford to run a little bit more defense on it. And, like you said, Miss Mag, with like Wo Chen, the majority of the team like already has a high attack stat, so the Wo Chen's ability won't negate their attacks by that much. But it's really good there. And then the slow king mode with wheezing or coughing, sorry, is really good. So obviously, yeah, there's a lot to be desired about this team. It's definitely one of my favorites, like I mentioned. Yeah.
Suppose it's my turn. So yeah, no, not a lot more than what has already been said, really. I mean, I think the Necrozma and the Kyurem is a really good cover, and what I really like about the Kyurem Black is that it's got the eyesight coverage that both Wheezing and Iron Hands really appreciates for those nasty ground types. It's able to threaten the ground types. I know Wheezing has Levitate, but like it's on a team with Slacking, it's going to be running Neutralizing Gas a lot. Wheezing itself, paired with Iron Hands as well. Iron Hands doesn't really use its ability, so it's a mon that doesn't really care if it loses its ability. The same with Kyurem Black, which I believe what's its ability again? Just remind me.
Arrow Volt, I think.
Yeah. So like it's a very niche situational ability. You pair Wheezing with Wo Xian, doesn't matter on that at that point. So like there's not a lot of like disconnect between the mons of the Wheezing and the other mons on his team, the abilities. So just free him up a little bit to be able to use those mons without them being hindered. It's only really Necrozma that has a bit of a issue with that. I like the Necrozma plus Slacking because you got Slacking is able to switch in from Necrozma to take the ghost type attacks, and same the way around for the fighting. The Wo Xian is able to swap in for the ground type moves from Iron Hands, so you're not really ever really wanting Iron Hands and Wo Xian on the field at the same time for that defensive attack reduction for everyone. If more so, it's more there for like a pivot piece to take the attacks for the Iron Hands. So, and also like maybe wither them down with leech seeds and foul plays and stuff, and all of its other utility moves. So I do think it's really cool, and that's aside from the fact that you've also got Rage Powder Redirection on the team and a nice attacking fire type. So.
With that being said, let's move on to team number 3. Team number 3 is the Flanders Flagons. Let's pivot over to Ted, actually.
Okay, so this is my week 1 opponent. Spoilers. Yeah, it's honestly really strong. Again, it's like another team that has a really strong kind of restricted pairing because Geo kind of is that. With the Eternatus, really strong bulky poison type. It can take a few hits with Cosmic Power, and it can run like Sludge Bomb, Dynamax Cannon, several other coverage moves is really gone on it, and like the rest of the team supports those two really well as well. Iron Tread's really good Steel type, has those ground moves to cover the main weaknesses for Chiyu and Eternatus. Jolteon and Staraptor, really strong supporting cast with that. Tailwind, obviously, with Staraptor. Intimidate and Reckless are both good abilities. Jolteon, really fast electric typing. You can afford to run a Terra type on it, like Ice or Grass, just to live a few hits. Thwacky is really good for terrain mode. There's not really much on their team that would utilize Grassy terrain as much, but the recovery is really nice as well. Keldeo, I'm not a huge fan of Keldeo. but it is there. You have to respect it. It has a really strong special and physical attacking stat. So you could end up seeing a mixed set with it as well. Granville is a pretty good fairy type as well. Secondary Intimidate, you can't obviously see both of them at the same time, so both it and Starruptor on the same field. So yeah, pretty good. And then Miss Magius, you just can't you you, you, you just can't ignore it. Really strong ghost type with Levitate. And then Cryogonal, good for proccing weakness policies, I guess, with I'm pretty sure with Ice Shard and Frost Breath into the Eternatus, if they end up wanting to run that. So yeah, overall the team is really well balanced. I like that every single Pokemon can play a role with the team. So yeah.
All right, I'll jump in. Yeah, this is a really cool team. We haven't seen Eternatus since the events of the Sword and Shield. Won't spoil that for anybody who hasn't played that series of games here. But I really do like that this team just has like that very strong GU plus like three or four very potent special attackers on this team, and that's just like obliterating you if you're caught in the wrong situation. But then he kind of also shores it up with having some really strong physical offense from the Granbull, from the Iron Treads, and from the Staraptor. I don't actually remember how balanced Keldeo's stats are. I just remember it is a little bit more of a special attacker, so it could also have some physical offense.
It's pretty low. It's pretty low on the physical side. It's a base 70.
Okay, so I was remembering right. And yes, as it was said before, like this Magius, my signature Pokemon, it fits really nice on this team, especially just offering that Levitate for the numerous amount of ground weaknesses, pairing along with the Cryogonal as well. So you can't just kind of freely throw ground moves into this team, and then the Thwackey cutting off some of the more common ground spread moves, cutting the damage down with grassy terrain for like earthquakes and stuff. It's a really well built together team, can't lie. I think probably one of the only things that may be a slight weak point of this team is that it's just very fast. There are very few slow mons on this team at all, but he does have Imprisoned Trick Room, so like that is a viable way to shut out like that people going for that strategy. But other than that, it's a pretty cool looking team. Matrix?
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on that one. Like, the team is like, I think they've only got 2 mons below base 100. Like, their entire team is fast. And I'm not saying like the team is super fast either. Like, it's a team that gets outsped by other Tailwind teams. So like that's one of the problems. You've already said some really good things about the team that I really agree with. This is where some of the like slight nitpicks that I have with the team comes to the front. Like it relies so heavily on the natural speed, which is good because you can invest more heavily in your offense. But the speed tiers are so close together within that 100 to 1. A lot of the time, teams might just go, well, what's the point of trying to outspeed this team? That's all up really high. I'll just go bulkier, and then you're missing out on you're not forcing the opponent to meet your speed tiers. It's very one-sided. You've got Thwackey. I think Thwackey is the most disconnected mon on the team. I think it's there just for fake out and as a grass type. And to provide grassy terrain to reduce the damage from ground type attacks, which are like earthquakes and stuff, which obviously the team does suffer from. And that is why you've got Miss Magius and Cryogonal on the team. You can kind of see the way the team's been built from the start. They've gone for the Chi-Yu, they've gone for the Eternatus to get that really special attacking combo really fast. They've got Keldeo and nice mythical special attack capabilities. You've gone for the Iron Treads and then the Jolteon. Nice little Discwave combo, or like Jolteon can be Terra Flying, really good, really fast again with Jolteon. Iron Treads you can also do Iron Treads plus electric terrain Jolteon to get the speed boost or like boost, the Quart Drive boost there. They've then gone, they need a bit more of resistance to Intimidate and grasp the ground weakness because they've got really low defenses. So they go Staraptor for the ground and Intimidate. They go for Thwackey to get terrain. You can see the way this team's been built. The ground ball is there. I actually really like the ground ball as like a really physically offensive mon. which also provides Intimidate, again, just to cover that defensive weakness that the team has. And then they've gone for the last 2 months being some fast Trick Room counter, but also providing them with Levitate, again, with Miss Magius. And then Kragnall there, I would say, for like a little bit more techy side of things, maybe a fast Icy Wing, good special defense, but also a special attacker that can benefit from the GU being on the field. But it seems like they just lean towards one way, but the other aspects of the team building, like I feel like Thwacky's, as I say, Thwacky's just there for fake out. Maybe there's a better grass type. This Magius is there for a levitating trick room, anti-trick room within prison, but maybe there's a better ghost type that would suit the team better. The Staraptor is a nice pick, sure, but maybe there's a better normal type on the team or a better flying type for the team. It's just all seems to be leaning fast. But yeah, I feel like the team's going to come up against teams where there's Tailwind, really good speed control, really good trick room modes, and the team's just not going to have the resources to match them.
That's valid. I think there'll be times where like you have to deal with like Rankster, Tailwind, or even just like really hard trick room from something like a Porygon 2 or like a Calyrex Ice that may give this team trouble because like yeah, you can imprison with Miss Magius all you want, but then Calyrex Ice, for example, will just click Glacial Lance and probably one shot you. So it'll just kind of delay the inevitable, but it seems like the main goal of this team is get damage out first and ask questions later. So we'll see what they can do. All right, so let us move on to team number 4. And actually, before I talk about this we talk about this team, Matrix actually reminded me. I didn't mention, but the order in which the Pokemon were drafted are starting with the one at the top left, and it goes from left all the way to right, and then just that's how it goes all the way down. Put them in that order so you can kind of see where coaches were sort of starting to build their drafts along the way. But we're up with Dunnikin and his Midland Marowak. Which one of you would like to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
It's a favourite team of mine, but I'm slightly biased. Yeah, so I'm slightly biased because I kind of helped Dunnikin draft the team. But I can kind of explain what the team's about and some of the oversights of it. So I really like the Miraidon. Miraidon is a really strong Pokemon in this format. I feel like I've yet to see it perform well in a restricted format. Maybe it's just because it's not been on part of the correct teams or not. I don't know. But what I really like about this team is that you've got Miraidon and Iron Jugular, so you get the Electric Terrain pairing without the need to boost your energy for Jugular, so you end up having a more defensive item like Port Jugular, which is really good. You've got that speed control right up there, front and center. It does share a fairy weakness, but then you've got Tinkerton, Gigaton Hammer, really strong support mod with that mold breaker ability. It's really good. It's got the fake outs, you've got the Thunder Waves, you've got Gigaton, Play Rough. It's really good hitting there. Your second restricted is the Deoxys attack. Now, it is just power incarnate. Yeah, it's frail as hell, but that doesn't matter if you are hitting so fast, so hard, that your opponent isn't even able to move and kill you first. It is the definition of attack first. It's 180 attack, 180 special attack, and 150 speed. With these first few mons, you're already forcing your opponent to be like prepping fast, hard-hitting mons. Not a lot of mons can switch into the drift move from a Rhydon or Electric Terrain, or a Terra Normal Extreme Speed Deoxys attack form, or a Terra Psychic from Deoxys. And so you've got a really offensive pairings all up front. But then you've also got like a nice little mid-tier combo with Politoed and Ludicolo, which I think we've seen where they dominate these type of formats before. And having a mon like Politoed and Ludicolo to really benefit from the other teams' rain, there are a few rain teams, or even just set their own and counter other teams' weather modes. It's like sun modes and the hail modes. Well, there's actually no sand mode, but it's a really nice mid-tier combination, which also helps against the ground types that you would face off against with Miraidon. Like a lot of teams will want to be bringing ground types to help against the onslaught from Miraidon because it's immune. But we've also got to deal with a rain mode, and a rain mode such as Political and Mythical. Embor, really good physical attacker. It's not got the highest attacking, 123. It's pretty low when in a restricted format, but it's pretty high nonetheless. You got that reckless ability with so many recoil heads, wild charge, flare blitz. It's a really cool mod. I really like Embor, and I think if you're going for a rain team, you want something hit hard. Embor can do with its coverage and fighting stab, or something that's really supportive. But then we get into our last few tier picks, and what Embor can also do is hit grass types really well. And same with Jugulis. Jugulis and Embor can hit grass types that the Miraidon really struggles to. You've got Gotharita, Shadow Attack, prevents people from switching. So one minute it's like you can't really switch into these attacks, but if you want to switch in, you can't. Shadow Attack is really difficult to play around. It's also a really good bulky Trick Room mod to counter other people's Trick Room modes. It doesn't get removed easily, outside maybe knock off onto the Eviolite, but it's still a tricky mod to deal with. Clodsire, really cool. I think provides a really good defensive typing to this team, especially with that water absorb. It really helps prevent opposing teams from benefit from his own rain. And then Bennett is a cool little frisk mod again. It's nothing super important, but for two or 3 points, it's not the worst mod in the world. That's my review.
Okay, I'll pass it over to
I agree with the majority of what you said, Matrix, but I guess like the main like little thing that I would like to point out is that that little mini Perish Trap mode with the Gotharita and Politoed. You know, like with Shadow Tag and Politoed gets Perish Song, so it's another mode in addition to the Electric Terrain and the Rain mode that you have to keep an eye for, because otherwise you're just going to lose to it if you don't pay attention to it. So again, yeah, it's another thing to keep an eye out for. But yeah, I think it's one of my other favorite teams as well on this team, or one of my other favorite teams in this draft. I really like the Electric Terrain mode with Jugulis and Miraidon. Fake Out with Tinkaton is really nice. Good Steel type really does work well in Rain. Obviously, the Rain mode, we already went over it, but again, really strong. And then the 3 low tier picks are definitely really good for this team defensively and to support.
Yeah, I also am a fairly big fan of this team. A little bit biased since I did add in my 2 cents when the coach was drafting it, but I'm also just absolute huge Ludicolo fan. I think Ludicolo is a great Pokemon on the right team, and I think this team is really well suited for it. It is unique in the sense that for a team that is predominantly probably going to play an electric terrain, it is not weak to electric moves, and I think that makes it ideal, whereas you would find a little bit more of a hardship to bring electric terrain in and your rain mode to the same set if you're worried about the opponents taking advantage of that by just blasting your Swift Swim, your Rain Sweeper with electric moves of their own. I also just love the little bits of pocket synergy, like we mentioned the Perish Song mode with the Goth. Oh my god, I always call it Mini Goth. I actually forgot. Well, Gotharita. There we go.
Gotharita, yeah.
Yeah, with the Gotharita. I also just like the sheer amount of fake out pressure this team has. Like, this team can really cycle fake outs, which can be useful. Like, you only get 1 Covert Cloak, and Ghost type mods are not going to really enjoy going up against Bayonet and Iron Jugulis all that much. So, solid team. Honestly, well put together. I would say maybe like the one thing I can honestly see this team maybe struggling with is like literally Gastrodon, and there's like a whole grass type here, and that's maybe the first thing that just happens to pop to mind. Because so many people will probably try to prep for the rain mode, try to prep for the electric mode, and try to prep for not getting rolled by Got the Reader. Like, you just kind of leave them nowhere to go. And you haven't even talked about how Deoxys is, what did Matrix say? Power incarnate? Yeah.
There is one little thing I'd like to add before we move on. So, Clodsire is what I meant to say. It was Water Absorb plus being a ground type means that it's immune to opponents of the rain and the electric terrain. That's what I was meant to say, which is a really good addition to the team. And lastly, Donna has done what I really wanted to do this season if I was playing, and that's drafting. I know we've got issues with Dragon Cheer at the moment until it's been fixed in game, but this was drafted prior to the known glitch of Dragon Cheer. And Iron Jugulis gets Dragon Cheer to pair with Miraidon, and I think that's just such a cool mode to be able to run, especially with like Dracos and Overheats off Miraidon, to be able to just be able to crit through those special attack drops. It's so strong. I really like the combination. I think it would do really well.
Yeah, you guys will be the first to know when that combination is legal for play, and hopefully it's for Dunn's sake it's sooner rather than later. But yes, let us move on to the next team. We have the Barcelona Malamaj, and I guess I'll start this one off. I actually really like this team. It has some of my favorite Pokemon on it from over the years. Specifically, love Ho-Oh. Never really got to use Palkia Origin, but I do like the original Palkia. The Malamats also drafted their mascot, which was their very first pick, so big ups to that for sure. But really, the thing about this team that I find so interesting is like it's like other than like some of those picks in the middle, like I don't think Dodrio is like good at all. And like the Gothita, obviously they just drafted it for like Shadow Tag, but like I really like the Ho-Oh, the Masquerada, the Palkia. Those are some pretty solid Fire, Water, and Grass core there. And then he just rounds it off like late game King Gambit, Regieleki. It's like there's just like so much offense on this team on all different fronts. With a few good defensive tools like the Riolu for like coaching and changing the weather, and the Gothita just to like restrict leads a little bit. Even Poltegeist just being able to set up Trick Room, maybe sneak in a Shell Smash there, is pretty good. But yeah, it's just really just like Dodrio is probably like the only thing on this team like I really don't like. Who wants to go next?
Yeah. I guess I'll go next.
Yep.
So, yeah, I really like this team. I'm a big fan of Riolu. Obviously, I've used him in the past, so I'm really excited to see what he does with it. But obviously, Prankster coaching is really nice for this team. Defensively, the restricted pairing is pretty nice. Ho-Oh and Palkia Origin is pretty good. I haven't seen too much of Palkia Origin, so I'm excited to see what he does with it. Ho is really good defensively with Regenerator, so you can set up Tailwind, click U-turn, or switch out, just full on switch out and gain that health back. And obviously, like the late hitters with Regieleki and King Gambit is really nice as well for that pure offensive or support power is really nice as well. And then Masquerada, really strong grass type, a really good starter this generation as well. So yeah, overall, really solid team. I guess there's like a few weaknesses, especially like to fighting. Mainly fighting, but they do have ways of covering that. So yeah.
Yeah, as you say with the weaknesses, the fighting's not too bad. They got the glaring fighting weakness with the Masquerada and King Gambit. That's kind of where it is. I mean, you've got Gothita, which is bringable as a resist, and Ho-Oh and Poltergeist are both like resistant immunity there. They've actually got more of a fairy weakness on their team with Malamar, having no resistances of one immunity and a weakness to fairy. You've got the Palkia, which is also weak to fairy, Riolu, which isn't really a weakness, let's be honest. It's a Riolu. And Masquerada itself. And with the Steel type not resisting, you can get like a really scary game against fairy types. going back to what you guys were saying, I really like the Riolo for this team. I think Riolo is actually kind of key to a lot of these mons. Like coaching into Ho-Oh is just absurd. Like a Terra Ho-Oh, it's already got a high speed F and a high HP, and giving it a defense boost and making it hit even harder. Like that's types of damage. It also able to set Sunny Day for it. I think you can get some priority attacks off into a Poltergeist weak armor and then coaching it afterwards to get stored power boosts. So I think that's kind of insane. I understand the Dodrio being a little bit like a mid pick, especially quite so early on in the they drafted that pretty early on, but maybe the best thing in that 3-point tier. It does get quite a bit of speed, 110, and it does bridge that speed gap between Palkia and the Ho-Oh, which is pretty nice. I will say that. And despite having 2 flying types, it's not like they have a major rock weakness thanks to King Gambit. Regieleki obviously is super fast, so they shouldn't really have to worry about something. But something like this team itself, what we see here is some very fast mobs, but they kind of bridge their speed tiers pretty evenly across, which is something we haven't seen in some of the other drafts. So that's something that's really nice. That I can appreciate. I'm pretty sure as well, Riolo outspeeds King Gambit, so you can take coaching into a Sucker Punch, which I think is hilarious. Just to give it +1/+1 again. Like an AV King Gambit with coaching. Wow. Yeah, no, the Riolu really puts pressure for the opponents to deal with this team.
Alright, so let us move on to the next team on the list, which is the Virginia Victinis. I believe this is Wreck-It Mike's team. I'll just kind of jump in. So, Rhydon, Fluttermane, Lugia, Brute Bonnet. Yeah, this is a Sun team. Not really any two ways around it. It's a Sun team. It's a very scary looking Sun team. Stone Journer just being there to like amp up damage. Like Fluttermane could have like booster energy, like Dazzling Gleams, like pumped up by Power Spot. Like, there's very few things that are just like really living those kind of hits. I thought at first there was a little bit of redundancy with like Murkrow, Brute Bonnet, Executor, Camera Up, kind of like all on the same team. Like I realized like they're different enough that there's a good amount of variety. Like with the way the team is set up, like Brute Bonnet can really afford to be on the offensive more often because like Lugia and Murkrow can provide some defensive pivots and utility. And then the same thing with like Brute Bonnet and Executor are both, yeah, they're both grass types that really like being in sun, but like Executor gives you that fast chlorophyll user that hits hard especially, and then Brute Bonnet gives you that really strong hard-hitting physical attacker. And then of course there's a Trapinch. Like, it probably won't come all the time, but like the fact that you may have to consider Arena Trap as a trapping move when you're trying to go against this team is not to be underestimated. I'll toss it over to Matrix actually.
Yeah, I've got. So, this is the difference between, like, in my opinion, what makes a good weather team and a weather team that's lacking. And I do feel like this kind of falls into that lacking category. Not to be like, I do like what they have. They're strong with the sun. Don't get me wrong, but they don't cover the weaknesses too well. It's pretty much all the eggs in one basket. If you look at this team as it stands, what's stopping ice coverage just absolutely melting this team? They have 3 mons that aren't weak to ice, and they have no resists. And that's just that. Yes, you can say it's a sun team, and it hits ice types really hard. But we're talking about a format that's got Terra. Now, a Terra ice type can do so much. It's a mon that's an type of can just do so much against it. Everything is weak to ice, except for Fluttermane, Stone Journer, and Camelot. 2 of those are weak to steel. That's already hitting 10 mons with just 2 attacks. And then the last one is a Camelot, which is a 4 times weak mon to water, for example. So, like, defensively, this team isn't too hot, even though it is a sun team. They've got repeat typings after repeat typings. They got flying, they got 2 psychics, 2 grounds, 2 grasses, 2 dragons, 2 darks. it's all a little bit too samey. And I know you're saying distinct enough, but it's not distinct enough for me to where I think I am confident with this team is going to be able to get win after win after win. It is a strong team, but with a plethora of weaknesses to the fairy type, with only Cameruptors that resist. I know Koraidon is technically a fire type with its Terran, but it's a mute point. They've got one dragon immunity in Fluttermane, and I feel like a lot of the team kind of just taking the non-super effective attacks, which isn't what Fluttermane's there for. And I know it's there for doing damage, but when Fluttermane is one of your only mons that isn't weak to like a plethora of types, it's kind of difficult to have confidence in that team is going to be able to go from matchup to matchup to matchup, consistently winning. It kind of has to rely on like text from Brute Bonnet and Executor setting Sleep, Powder, and Spore to prevent the opponent from attacking, or just outright destroying the teams as quickly as possible with Stonejourner, Koraidon, and Fluttermane. And although that will work for a lot of teams, I don't know if it will work all the way to see them through it to the end.
Ed?
Yeah, I think you guys perfectly covered what I thought about this team. Yeah, this team is a really strong Sun team with Fluttermane and Koraidon and Lugia and Brute Bonnet and with the other supporting pieces. I just think it's probably one of the weaker of the Sun reliant teams or Rain reliant teams. I just think like the weaknesses are going to be hard to overcome. I don't think it's going to be impossible, but it's something that Rick and Mike has to consider moving forward, and even maybe possibly make some changes to the team, because I think there's several like changes that he could make for this team. But overall, I just think it's one of the weaker weather teams.
All right. With that being said, let's
Still
move
a good
on
team,
to. Oh yes, definitely still a good team. But let's move
It's a
on
very
to
strong team.
what turns into another weather team. So we've gone from Sun. We're gonna go over to the Toronto Star Raptors, coached by Camo Dude, and we're gonna talk about rain. I will start this one off actually. Kyogre. Everybody loves Kyogre. Probably everybody's favorite restricted mon. Am I right? Everybody loves Kyogre. And it's funny because one of the better answers to Kyogre probably in this format would have been Raging Bolt, but they have that too. It's this like a super top heavy team. Like it's not even funny. Like their second restricted is Cosmog. But I also really appreciate how extremely strong that six that they have, that first six, really are, and I can conceivably see that those six literally coming every week without really any problem. Maybe the Grookey or the Slowpoke thrown in there, but those top six pretty much run it, I would say, every week.
Yeah,
Just so much offense there.
yeah. Again, it's like this is one another of my favorite weather teams. I really like the mode with Mousehold and Archaludon. Beat up with Stamina is obviously a huge staple with Mudsdale, but I think Archaludon is just kind of a better Mudsdale in a sense that it's also a Steel type and a Dragon typing. So it doesn't resist Fairy typing that well, but it is super strong with Stamina and also having whatchamacallit, the ability, remind me, guys.
Stalwart?
Yeah, Stalwart. Being able to ignore those redirection moves is really nice for this team, especially like for Mousehold and Basculegion in the rain. So yeah, really strong team overall. Talonflame, strong tailwind support, always needed. This team is fairly slow. I would say their fastest Pokemon is that Mousehold, minus Basculegion and Rain. So having that tailwind support is really nice. And then Thunderclap, a really strong electric priority move. Being able to, hit those other water types that would otherwise utilize Kyogre's Rain is really nice as well. So yeah, overall, really strong team. Like you mentioned, Ms. Back, like those six Pokemon could easily come every week, and maybe even Slowpoke or Grookey could eventually come and swap out for like either like Talonflame or Basque Legion, depending on the matchup. So yeah, overall, really solid team.
I'll go next. So, yeah, super strong team, and it's what I would call a super strong 6 SSS. It's a good, like, if you isolate the top half of the team from the other half, it's probably the single strongest team. Like, if you're looking at pure which are the strongest 6 mons a team out of all the teams, this team's top 6 is probably higher than every other team's. It's really good. It's a really synergistic weather team, which has underlying like other synergies within it. I've already seen Talonflame and Kyogre do really well, because Talonflame's got that quick guard. It's really annoying. You can't exactly go fake out to teams, so you can get Scarf Kyogre's bouts going off. You can't go for resist because water resist because of the thunderclap or the electric signature move of the Arculudon or whatever it's called. I can't pronounce his name. Basque Legion's a really cool Swift Swimmer to add on. Gonna deal with, and it's you start to mount up real difficulties in like how do you deal with this team. As much as I want to like discredit it for being basically a 6-mon draft, it's still really difficult to deal with those 6 mons. Like, there's only so much I can take away from the team from being so top heavy. Yeah, you've got Slowpoke, which is a really cool low tier mod to have like anti-Trick Room, because of one way of dealing with this is maybe going for a Trick Room. But you still have to deal and contend with like Taunt on the Talonflame or the Mousehold, or just Slowpoke is one of those ones that can be slapped on its just to reverse the Trick Room or to yawn your Trick Room setters and stuff. Grookey sure has got Fake Out and does provide grassy terrain recovery to a certain degree, similar to the Thwacky on the other people's team, on the other person's team, though it's a little bit like, it's whatever. The team itself does have a bit of a weakness to ground, with Talonflame being the only unity, should I say, and I'm not counting those lower tier picks in Grookey as a resistance to the ground type moves. There's also no real resistance to dark ghost type moves, so Mousehold, sorry, is a resistant ghost. No real resistant dark moves, so Basque Legion is a little bit threatened on that front. What's really nice to see is the amount of resistances to grass for Kyogre. You've got 2 4-type resistances as well as a team that resists it. So Basque Legion and Kyogre pretty well handled there. The team is a little bit on the weak side to a so if you can deal, if the problem with it for this team is if you can deal with the 2 dragons, like electric and grass can kind of go pretty hard against the team outside of Terra. The 2 dragons being there, as I say, is that ground weakness, so you just kind of got to contend with. To cover for most of the mons that you have to face here is just electric ground, and kind of dealing with most of the team. And there's also not a single fairy, so dragon moves like we're in a restricted format. Dragons are a dime a dozen, and Dracos are being fired off left and right, and there's not a single dragon resist on this team. None of these mods can take a dragon type attack, and you're having to all this investment into dragon types, not dragon types, into your terrors to just be able to take those type of attacks. But saying that, we've seen how Kyogre runs. We see how much damage it can do. We know Terra Water with Tailwind support, the Water Spouts, they're going to be doing absolutely absurd amount of damages. So this team is really well prepared on the offensive front, and a few other capabilities like Mousehold and the Arculudon. Like, there's not much else I can really say. That's not really been said.
Those are valid points, and like I acknowledged a lot of what you both said before, saying my first piece. But I've recognized that, especially seeing how some of the teams have been drafted and looking so far, it's like so many of the teams so far have just opted to go with a kill first, ask questions later strategy, and this is really probably the epitome of I'm just going to brute force my way through a lot of the things that will give me trouble. With superior speed control, with very strong blistering offense, and honestly I think this team would probably be like phenomenally easier to deal with if they didn't have Raging Bolt. Just like having that extra priority pressure on top of things like the Aqua Jet from the Basque Legion is going to sidestep even matchups where they do not have the speed advantage.
I personally think the Talonflame is the star for this team, and that might be a given because Tailwind is always going to be really good for like a Kyogre team, like Tornoga. Wow. But Talonflame gets a few tools that Tornadus doesn't get, which is Quick Guard, Will-O-Wisp. And they are deadly on that point to support a team like this. It's going to be really difficult for teams to break through the combat 06 months, I can tell you that.
Alright, let us move on to our next team, which is the DK Jungle Beat, coached by Yeet. Let's start with Ted.
Yeah. So this is one of the teams that I recommended to make some trades, especially like the lower tiers. Ogre having access to all the Ogre Prime forms is really nice. Especially the water form, I think, is definitely going to help for this team. Having access to Follow Me and Spiky Shield and Horn Leech for recovery is really nice. And then Arceus, I believe this is Poison. It is not the best offensively. It is good defensively, but the majority of their team doesn't really want to take ground type attacks. They do have those immunities with Rotom and Levitate Latias, but other than that, they don't really have a good way of taking those ground type attacks well without Terra or Follow Me with Ogerpon. So that's something that could definitely be exploited a bit with Arceus. Fake out option with the Man Shell is really nice. A Trick Room option to stop other opposing Trick Room teams from going up with Mimikyu is nice. Goldango really strong. Steel type with Make It Rain. And Terra Stealing to boost up that Make It Rain is really nice as well. And even once Dragon Cheer becomes fixable, they can utilize that with the Latias, because I'm pretty sure it gets Dragon Cheer. So having like crit Make It Rains is really nice as well. So yeah, that's something that can be utilized much later. And obviously, I'm not really a big fan of Golem, but it is a ground type. It's really nice next to the Rotom with Disquake. So yeah, just some things to consider with that. But overall, it's really a strong team. I'm just not a big fan of the Arceus typing, and the a little bit low tiers with Golem and the little two dogs. So
I'll jump in. Especially for the Arceus typing, yeah, that's the Arceus Poison type. I did have it last season when I competed. I think it's like one of the best defensive typings you can get from like the third group of Arceus. So these 18 types of Arceus, for reference, is split into 3 different groups depending on basically how viable and valuable the singular typing is. So Poison is, I think, one of the better ones in like the third group with like things like Bug and Ice, like things that like types that have like a lot of defensive like they have a lot of weaknesses. But I will agree that I don't think Poison is the best typing when like some of your heavier hitters are like Goldango and the various forms of Ogerpon. Just even adding a mon that shares a weakness with Goldango can be stifling to what you attempt to do. And I mean, yeah, you have 2 levitators, and like obviously every form of Ogerpon is either neutral or resisting a grass move. None of them are weak to it with the Follow Me, but it's just something that maybe could be considered, like in terms like you were saying, like making some trades. I actually don't mind the Golem on this team. Like I'm kind of glad they actually got some level of ground damage, but I do think like some of those lower tiers and maybe a few other things can be shuffled around just to squeeze a little bit more out of this team. Like there's a strong defensive mon in the Latias. There's the various forms of Ogerpon that can be run anywhere from defensive to offensive based on the week. And then you have some heavy hitters like Xiao and Goldango. You can definitely shore up the rest of the team to sort of center around those, I guess technically 8 mons when you count all the forms of Ogerpon. Matrix?
mean, I'm pretty neutral towards the team in general. Like, any team that's going to have all 4 forms of Oakborn is going to be pretty strong. I don't know how I feel about them basically limiting their Fire, Water, Grass core all to 1 mon. It means that they can't ever bring a Fire and a Water type together, per se. It means that every time that they bring their Fire type, it's going to have to be the Grass type, or every time they bring the Water type, it has to be the Grass type, They might, I suppose that's the kind of the issue though when you end up drafting an Oakborn that can become all forms. Like, why would you need a Fire type? You can just use Oakborn. So there's a little bit of that for me. I don't actually have as big of an issue with the Arceus Poison. I actually think it's the best Arceus that they could have picked from that tier, from that group. I don't think there's any point in drafting any of the other Arceus forms in that. You've got Fighting, Ice, Bug, Rock, I believe. Like, none of them are really great. So I definitely think Poison is the best one they could have gone for. I agree there's a bit of a clash with the Goldango ground weakness, but like, if you're thinking about how the game's going to be played, which is like maybe leave Latias and back, and you've got the Ogerpon and up front next to the Arceus. They were always going to be able to switch in like Latias or Ogerpon attack, maybe the Rotom Fan. Like, it's very rare that we're going to be leading both Goldango and Arceus Poison at the same time. So I don't think it's going to be too big of an issue. I like the Mimikyu. It's cool. It's a cool fairy type. Don't know if I like the fact that it's another shared weakness with Goldango. I do think Goldango benefits the most when there's a reduced amount of shared weaknesses. So I understand where you're coming from with ground typing. I definitely think Ogerpon would largely benefit from being the water type variant throughout the entire time. Maybe a couple times it'll be the fire. I can't remember the mask names. The fire mask one. It just seems like the grass and water typing is the most beneficial typing for this team. And the thing I have an issue with the Mimikyu as well being that there's no ghost resists. Like, that's the biggest issue to me. Like, aside from the ground weakness with Goldango, there's literally no way of this team stopping ghost attacks, just hammering through them. Like Latias, Goldango, Mimikyu, they all are weak to the ghost typing, which is kind of troublesome. And I know Goldango can hit hard, and Latias is a good tailwind setter, so is Arceus. But like, there are faster tailwind setters, there are better trick room setters. So there are going to be teams that are going to struggle against from a damage point of view in that way. Mienshao, I really like his fighting type, so I've got nothing against Mienshao at all. The Golem, I like it. I don't hate it. I think it's a cool wide guard user, which is pretty important for this team. It stops teams from getting earthquake into them, and especially expanding force and all those other type of moves. I would have preferred for their ground type to not also be weak to ground. That's something I will say. But like, there's only so much you can do with like a 2-3, like a low on. I don't know how many points this one is, but there's definitely good bits about the team. There's definitely some negatives. There's definitely areas for it to be improved upon. That's kind of my stance on the team. I'm trying to think of anything else I can see. I mean, Arceus is it's got a lot of high tier versatility to the team. I suppose that's really nice. So, yeah.
Alright, let us move on to our next team, which is the Colorado Rock Slides. I'll throw this one over to Ted to start.
Okay, so I believe this is the third one of the many Sun teams in this draft. I like the Sun mode with Torkoal and Reshiram. I think those two together are really strong. Taking a Specs blue flare in Sun is honestly really hard to do without setting up rain on your side, or just ended up just Terra watering one of your Pokemon. So that's something that opposing teams have to deal with. Solgaleo is really strong as well with I believe it's full metal body that stops stat drops. Could be wrong.
Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, having the ability to stop intimidates and stuff like that is really strong as well. Obviously, a steel type in Sun is not ideal, but I think it's a really strong restrict to pick next to Reshiram. And then Whimsicott, obviously the big hitter with Prankster Tailwind, Taunt, Grassy Terrain, and other good, very supporting moves is really strong with this team. Scrafty, a really strong fake out user with Intimidate and Moxie. I think those two abilities will definitely be utilized throughout the season, especially on this team. Um, and yeah, it also has Helping Hand as well. So having fake out and Helping Hand together is really strong. And then Victory Bell, another grass type, not ideal, but is really strong in Sun X, Torkoal, and Reshiram, being utilized Chlorophyll with Solar Beam or Solar Blade, if you really want to run a physical set. And then Weirdeer, really strong Psychic type with the normal typing added to that. It's a good way of stopping Trick Room as well. If you do end up running into problems such as Trick Room teams, so yeah, overall really strong with that. And then the three low tier picks with Gligar, Ampharos, and Jigglypuff, they all provide good ways of stopping certain things. Obviously, the Ampharos being the main thing, stopping with those water types. Although it is a Sun team, it's always nice to having the option to stop those water types if Victory Bell doesn't do its thing with that. Gligar being a ground type in Sun is really nice as well. Having a low tier ground type is always appreciated as well with Eviolite. And then Jigglypuff is Jigglypuff. It can do Perish Song, it can do Dazzling Gleam, it can do various other things. Being a low tier fairy, so overall really strong typing or not typing, really strong team. Um, and yeah, we'll just see what happens during the season with this Sun team.
Okay. Yeah, so this is as you said, it's a Sun team. What a surprise, you know. I think we've said that quite a few times. Feels like every team is weather team. I like the fact that the Sun team it's got Torkoal and Whimsicott. You can set some. There's the Prankster version with the Tailwind as well, which is really good. Or there's just straight up Torkoal. So there's a lot of flexibility in setting the following the weather the way that the team wants. Where some of the issues I've got is the team is incredibly weak to its own weather and ground. Again, like you've got a dual restricted pairing, which I admit is a really good pairing and got strong special attack. Good. But both of them are weak to ground, which is also the same weakness that your Sunsetter has, which also seems to be the same weakness. And yet you've got no resists to ground outside a low tier Gligar, which Gligar I think is a cool mod, and Whimsicott, which isn't exactly known as a defensive switch-in or defensive piece. So again, it's like, and it's saying that one of your only resists to ground is also weak to fire, which is your type of team you're running. You're running Sun. So I feel like fire and ground really do on this team. And again, this is a terraform. I get that, but it does put a lot of impact on when you terra and who you're terroring, which often enough would be your higher tier mons to avoid the damage from ground types. So I feel like it can always be flowcharted in a way to build against. Like, oh, okay, so this team's going to be covering for their ground weakness if you've got a mon with a ground type, a really strong ground type, which a lot of teams will have. So there's that slight defensive issue that I have. Aside from that, I think what Ted said about the Sun and their actual power is really good. I think Whimsicott's a really good pick for the team. Like, Tailwind with any of these mons, like the Reshiram, Leo, is really good. Even Scrafty. And I haven't spoken too much about the Scrafty. I really like Scrafty, and I think it's a really well positioned. And that's because Scrafty it's the only mon on this team that's weak, which is brilliant for Scrafty, because you're not having to deal with the Dragon type that's also weak to Fairy. And it actually hits hard, and it's bulky. With Terra as well, like, it can live a long time and do a lot of damage, and will be able to get those Moxie boosts. or just intimidate and be really supportive and annoying. So I think the Scrappy is really good. I think the Weird Ear is really nice on this team. I think the Victory Bell is actually pretty cool. I think it's a really attacker with a decent chlorophyll ability, decent chlorophyll speed. As I say, where my main issues just lie, it's just that defensive backbone of the team. It's just not strong enough against opposing ground type fire types, which is funny for a Sun team. The Trick Room element is good, but it might not just be enough for the Torkoal. What is cool is that you'll never know with this team if it's going to be Tailwind centric or if it's going to be Trick Room centric. When you see that team preview, these mons don't suggest one way or another, and that's one really good point about the team. Over to you, Mike.
Chris basically said the bulk of what I would probably say, but I'll throw this in. Yeah, I also really like this team. It actually just has some of my personal favorite mons that I would probably want to run in Sun. I am a huge Whimsicott fan in the general sense, but like, I just like there's rarely a time that I would say like a team should have more than one grass type, but like it really does fit here. And like, there's probably never going to be an opportunity for you to run chlorophyll on Whimsicott, but like let's not forget that it exists there too. But yeah, no, I think the biggest thing is like I would just love to really like see like a water type somewhere, like some way to deal with the opposing fire types, as you said.
Fire and ground, yeah, you're completely right.
Yeah, and ground types. It kind of it's a little bit miffed that like Victory Bell is neutral to ground, so like that's not like an added ground resist there. But you know, that's just kind of is what it is. I do like the supportive tools on this team. I like the Whimsicott, I like the Scrafty. I even really like the Weird Ear. Just adding another dose of intimidate pressure is very helpful. Also, Imprison Trick Room for the times that they may want to lean a little bit more into the fast mode. But yeah, this team puts out stupidly high damage numbers with Whimsicott being able to like set a lot of these guys up for success. And ain't nothing scarier than like a Torkoal and Tailwinds if you've ever experienced that. But I have. It's not fun. I'll put it that way.
Just to add on to the chlorophyll and Scott fit suggestion, there is one instance which I can see actually work pretty well, and that's against a team that's pretty heavily invested against Pranksters, so like a few good dart types. You can easily just run a chlorophyll with Scott with the Sun, and it'll work just as well.
Yeah, that's true. Or if you have to deal with psychic terrain, there's a lot of answers here, but I too also really like this Solgaleo and the Reshiram pairing. It's really cool. All right, let us move on to the next team. I believe that is the Middle Village Pedubs. Actually, just kind of jump in here. I really thought this was one of the coolest teams during the draft process. I was really interested when Rum started off with Zacian and Iron Boulder, and then followed it up with like Roaring Moon. Just very like solid offensive pressure just in those 3 picks alone. Then he kind of follows it up with the Ninetales, and then goes down to the beginning of the second row with the Zorak and the Zapdos. Picks up some good special offense. So I think he got a really strong team out of even just those 6. And then he did his best to like round it off with like the low tier picks, because obviously those first 6 they're expensive. Like it's a pretty top heavy team by the points. So I like what he ended up coming out with. Even though there's no like Snow Abuser here for the Ninetales, just being able to set up free Aurora Veil for some of these like really strong behemoths is really not to be underestimated. I'll throw it over to Ted.
Yeah, I mostly agree with you. I think I think this team is mostly top heavy with that Zacian and Iron Boulder. I think Iron Boulder is really interesting in this format. Being able to break through Protect with its signature move is really nice for this team. I think that having the ability to do that is going to help out the Zacian and the Roaring Moon specifically. Yeah, it does suck that there's no abuser to Snow, but I don't think this team really needs Snow that much. It just mostly needs that Aurora Veil to go up and be able to live a few things, especially like with Zacian and the Iron Boulder being weak to ground. So Having that is really nice as well. And then like even the low tier picks, like they're not bad per se. Leavanny, yes, it's weak to flying and rock and fire and all that, but I think it's pretty nice for a grass type. If given the opportunity, Grumpig, a really underrated psychic type, being able to stop Trick as well for those faster Pokemon is nice. And then Cramorant for water type, for cheap water type, I think it's alright. It's pretty much situational depending on the matchup, but it is there for the water type need. And then Cleffa with Frengard, it doesn't get follow me, but Frengard is always appreciated. To increase your bulk on top of Aurora Veil is really nice. So yeah, even the low tier picks have some use, but overall really solid team. I would say it's mostly like middle of the pack team, even though it's like really strong. For the first 6 Pokemon.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you with especially the Ninetales point about how this team really benefits from these screens about making the Zacian live as long as it can, if we're being realistic. Yeah, the team has got a slight. It's not even like it's weak to ground, even though the Zacian and the Iron Boulder are weak to ground. The rest of the team isn't exactly weak to it. You got a nice ice type to deal damage. Let's be honest, Roaring Moon is so common to Terra Flying anyway. Like, it's another immunity there, and Zapdos is pretty good. The team's slightly weak to Rock. Like, there's a lot of Rock weaknesses, but like, I don't know how much the Rock weakness matters when you're going against a Zacian and an Iron Boulder with that type of attack stat into the like all the physical, all like with sacred swords and stuff like that. So like it's not too bad on the weakness sides of things. It seems pretty well balanced for that in terms of type coverages and their weaknesses. I think Ramblon's a cool mon. I don't think it's super amazing. I think it's cool to see it being used on the team. At least it's a more to say. I don't think there's a fire type on this team. Correct me if I'm wrong.
There's
Nope,
not.
you're right.
Which is a shame to see. Like the fire water grass core is a little bit non-existent. But at least they've got a really cool fantasy core in Roaring Moon, Zacian, and well, I suppose Zacian is both, but Ninetales as well. I think the Hisuian Zoroark is interesting. I think Hisuian Zoroark is a really good mon, but a lot of their mon ability procs reveal themselves. Like, we can never disguise it as Ninetales. They can never disguise it as Zacian. Roaring Moon can be, but like the amount of times you boost your energy on it, it's like. And the same with the Iron Boulder, like there's a kind of conflict there, so you get item procs to reveal it. Like you can disguise it as Zapdos, which is pretty alright, or maybe Grumpig, but that's about it really. Like it's got very few actual disguises. It's still nice to disguise as a couple of those for like if you're not boost energy, especially because fake out into Zapdos or Roaring Moon you can't do. If it's disguised as Zoroark. They've got some decent speed tierings, very high and very top end, and all the way through it's like hundreds to Leavanny. I actually think Leavanny's performs. I think it's better than what it's often tiered, but I've never seen it used, so I don't know. I think I'm really interested in how Leavanny performs. I love Grumpig. I think it's a really cool mon. I think it's a really good. I think a mon that's there to just reverse the Trick Room and just kind of provide that like low tier level of support. So yeah, really cool. I don't hate the scene. Don't dislike it. Don't love it. I think it's a good team. It's just very middle pack for me.
So let us move on to the next team. It's going to be coached by Ed, and it's his Fire Island Knights. So I'll just jump in. This is, I believe, is this our first team? I think only one restricted or mythical. It might be.
No, the Kyogre team technically.
Oh yes.
I don't count the little snebby thing as well.
Alright, yes, alright, fair enough. Well, this one only has one restricted, but it's a very powerful one from the days of old, Calyrex Ice. Um, Back when Dynamax was a more oppressive thing, I would say it was significantly better. It's not terrible these days, but Ed has basically crafted a form of hard trick room. There is, I think, the fastest one on this team is literally Doug Trio, followed by Grafai with like base 120, 110, and then Delphox is like 104, and then everything kind of just like tapers off to like maybe like the 70s after that. But that's fine. He's got a lot of bulk on his side. Really love the top four row. The Calyrex Ice, the Porygon 2 Clefable, and the Metagross. Those are some of just my favorite mons in general to use. But they're just also such very bulky offensive threats that really can do well if you have good speed control. Now, outside of that, his speed control is not super great. Like Rafia can do a lot of things with like Scary Face and like tricks, and I don't actually think it gets Thunder Wave, but you know, it gets like prankster shenanigans. But I don't think that's gonna be quite like good enough. Like one thing I would really love to actually see with this team is like a really strong Tailwind setter, if that was possible, based on what's left on the board. Because being able to threaten a good Trick Room mode with what you have, and then also like throwing up Tailwind as option for like low bulky things like Metagross and even Porygon offensive P2 is like really devastating from like a prep perspective. I'll throw it over to Ted.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, but mostly like this team is really, really bulky, especially in Trick Room. Milotic and Calyrex neck together in Trick Room is really, really scary to deal with, honestly. Milotic just kind of covers that fire weakness that Calyrex has, and then Calyrex covers obviously that water, or not water, that grass and somewhat electric weakness to that. And then P2 and Clefable are really strong support. Leading those two, the only way to really stop that is with fake out. But again, like one way to avoid that is with fake out, or not fake out, cover cloak on that P2. So again, like having Fallen Me with Unaware and P2 with Trick Room with Eviolite is really, really bulky. It's a strong way to get up Trick Room for this entire team. Grafai and Dugtrio are interesting, both being the fastest Pokemon on this team. I think Parting Shot with Prankster is really nice. Having Fake Tears and Doodle as well. Although not a lot of their team don't really want to lose their abilities, but Doodle is there to utilize that. And then Arena Trap is nice as well on this team. Not many want to be in during certain situations, but I think you would probably see a Rain Trap in play most of the time. If not Sandville, if against like some sort of mini little sand core, if even that's a thing. Meganium and Adelphox are really okay starters, I would say. Meganium is not the best grass type, but it is a grass type. You have to deal with it. And then Delphox is good for secondary Trick Room with fire typing as well. So, yeah, overall, really strong, balanced Trick Room team, I would say. I think that, like what you said, Miss Mag, like this team would greatly benefit from having a Tailwind user, so it can threaten a little bit of those faster teams. But overall, really solid.
Yeah, I think I don't think the team necessarily needs Tailwind, or like a really fast mode. It is very much dedicated to the Trick Room, and it does it pretty well. But I would like to see like a flying type or an electric type on the team. I think that's kind of what which does come with that natural speed, higher speed. Like, it'd just be nice to have like a flying or an electric type on the team. Especially with the fact that this team's going to struggle a little bit against like bulky water types. Like they don't really have the strongest removal against them. Like Meganium's the only grass type, so the only non-terra stat versus water, which isn't the best. As far as like a Trick Room centric team goes, it's really good. Like Porygon, Clefable, Calyrex Ice, Milotic, they're great. Like Milo really covers the intimidate worry that both Kali and Kali has as well. Metagross obviously has clear body. I don't know how much I love Metagross and Kali Ice being on the same team. They're both physical attackers with similar type coverage. Obviously, Kali Ice has ice moves, and they're both weak to like fire, ghost, dark. So like it's a little bit of overlapping role maybe there. And they're both are weak to being burnt, so there is that. But I understand that they're both really strong and bulky, and I think Metagross obviously has the advantages of being like a steel type. I do like the Dugtrio with the team, funny enough. Like, I don't love Dugtrio as a mon, but I think it's pretty cool to have the Arena Trap, like you say, on this team. And, like, as a fast ground type, it's not the worst thing in the world to get some damage off. Like, it's got base 100 attack, 120 speed. It's not like you're going to be overly prepping for a Dugtrio, but like, it's there, you gotta still respect this one. I think the Mienfoo is actually pretty cool in the team. Gives the team some fake out. In a focus fake out at that. And it's not a bad attack stat. 85 is pretty good. And it still provides you with a role to like coaching into Metagross or Kali Ice. Like, it's got base 65 speed, so you can still do some type of strategies there. Delphox, yeah, cool fast type. Maybe one too many psychic types on this team. You've got a bit of a ghost weakness. You have two normal types though, with Fire and Pouring Up 2. I actually really like the Fire on this team with Prankster. Even though it's not like the most conventional form, it's still its Prankster Rain Dance, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty nice to help out against the fire weakness this team's accumulated. I'm from Ganium. I kind of like it. I think it's really good on this team. I think it can be that really it just sits there. It sets a screen, light screen or reflect, Leech Seed. I think it gets Leech Seed. You'd have to correct me if I'm wrong. It can sit there, be really passive, really annoying, and just chip the team down whilst the Kali Ice is waiting in the back to like come in and take out the KOs and get its chilling May boost. So, overall, it's not the worst team in the world. Yeah, it suffers a little bit from some speed. Few types missing here and there, but I don't think it's as detrimental to a team like this than it is to some of the other teams. It's going to be really difficult to stop teams from this team's setting Trick Room outside of in prison. Like, but okay, there's ways around that. So, yeah.
Alright, let us move on to the next team, which is the Tentacle Pirates, coached by DJS. Ted, why don't you start us off?
So DGS made a big brain move during the grace period with this. I believe it was the volcanoes, the Villa Blanca volcanoes. They ended up dropping Arceus, and DGS just ended up swooping up this Arceus and making this team a little bit better, I would say. Having two normal types isn't the greatest, but I think both of them do different things enough to where that this team is really scary. I think Magearna and Arceus together is going to be hard to deal with. It's not impossible, but it is a scary threat to think about. Magearna does provide that Trick Room support for Ursaluna. However, they do have Sinistcha, which is a great utility Pokemon. Having Machigacha being able to, have the chance of burning opposing physical attackers is really nice, and having Rage Powder and Trick Room is nice as well. Salament's really good Intimidate Pokemon. Can also run Moxie, can have Tailwind as well, if we want to go really fast. And then Muck is also another good Trick Room option. Having that Stab Dark typing is nice as well. And then Alolan Raichu, I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is fake out support, so it's there for that to end up setting up Trick Room for either Magearna or the Sinistcha, if they want to do that turn one. And then Golduck is a great way to stop a lot of these weather teams with Cloud9, and being a water type itself is really good counter for those rain teams. So yeah, overall a really strong Trick Room team, but they have other ways of utilizing their fast mode, especially like with Arceus and Salamence, and Golduck and Raichu. So yeah, I think it's one of those like top tier end teams that could definitely utilize their top tiers and restricted pairings.
Do you want me or do you miss me?
Yeah, go ahead, Matrix.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Like we said, I think I actually, the more I look at this team, the more annoyed I get because it's good, but there's just something about it. It's just like I can't put my finger on it. Might just be the fact that yeah, you're right, double normal. I don't know. Something just seems a bit off, but like the more you look at it, it's just like yeah, it's good. Sinister is a really good support piece. It's going to be really annoying to deal with the Trick Room and the Magic Gotcha and the Fatality. Blood Moon Ursaluna, which is still just a strong threat. You've got the Gearna who can set Trick Room itself. Soul Heart's ability, which is super annoying to deal with. As you kill the mons around it, like Sin Gearna boosted up more. I don't know how Power of Alchemy works with abilities like Hospitality, but like I suppose it's a way of working. Like you might be able to get like a nice little HP rebuff on the Muck after Sinister goes down. It's cool to get Mind's Eye onto it with Drain Punches and stuff. So you can get Intimidate. Cloud 9. Some cool stuff for the Muckaloa. Not the most synergistic, but I think as a mon, I think its typing actually suits the team pretty well. Slightly weak to ground, but like it's not the worst team I've seen out there. That's weak to ground. I don't really count Sport Bunny as the ground weakness. Like Magina and Muck are weak to ground. Raichu weak to everything. It's a sash bomb at the end of the day. But it's a really good mon for the team with like Fake Outs, Muzzle, Electro Webs, stuff like that, which I think is really nice for like this faster mode this team is running. As you say, like the RCS being on this team makes it a lot better. Yeah, it's slightly weak to fighting, but it's also like not weak to fighting. You've got Magina to worry about, which is neutral, but like it does so much damage. Sinister just ignores it, and you've got Rage Powder, so like you'd have to waste either Terra Grass or Safety Goggles on a mon. You've got Salamence, which actually has Flying Stab on like a lot of, and it's a Moxie ability as well. At that, like I don't know, and even Raichu provides a decent special attack stat. 95 isn't terrible to be hitting a lot of those fighting types for. So I think overall the team's pretty well suited to doing what it wants to do. Sure, it's not going to be the most diverse and diverse team out there, but it's very good at imposing the role it wants to impose and get that Magona boosted and going.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you guys. Like the team is top heavy in a way that is a little bit different than some of the other ones that we've seen, and that so much that it doesn't have like I would say like really only the two baby mons at the bottom, the little Score Bunny and the Citadel are like truly probably never really seeing that much play. So it's not just a top 6, but in terms of like what this team aims to do, like it wants to set up one of its 2 restricteds for the Ursaluna in many ways to just kind of blitz the opponent with offense, and then kind of the other 5 mons. I mean, I guess Salamence can be an offensive threat in its own right, but like the Raichu, the Sinistra, and probably even the Golduck to a degree are all going to come in support of making sure that goal is possible. Mutt can be a very good offensive or defensive pivot piece depending on like what the matchup is. Use that mon a fair bit myself, and Power of Alchemy with things like Soul Heart and Mind's Eye and even Intimidate are actually like really cool interactions to have. But I do think the linchpin of this team in some ways is really going to be like Sinistra, being able to threaten redirection, healing, Trick Room, so that Ursaluna and Magina do not have to set it up for themselves is very nice. But I guess it's sort of answered at like what cost. Like you do have 2 mons here that don't really plan on coming to any games, and Alolan Raichu is budgeted for a reason, because unless you're rocking electric terrain, it doesn't exactly have an ability. So, you know, it's like I feel like DJ has found a way to sort of balance out what he wanted with that trade, because there was no way he was just gonna let Arceus normal just sit there in free agency. He said so himself.
Yeah, I think something that I was just looking here now. It does have a slight tendency towards an ice weakness, but again, Gira's got that so well covered. And the Sinistra, as you say, it provides the support that like really makes Arceus so much more threatening. Because Arceus is only weak to fighting, and it's got item flexibility, which none of the other Arceuses that have been drafted have. And it can actually lead to some really strong positioning for an Arceus game. Like, look at it just being maybe an offensive Terra Normal E-Speed mod. Like, it's really flexible, and I think that it's a really good piece added onto this team. And the last thing I like about this team is that, unlike some of the other heavier drafted teams, a lot of them rely on Terra to get around some weaknesses, and I genuinely don't think that this team has to rely on Terra to get around its weaknesses. It's drafted with the weaknesses in mind, and Terra's just a bonus that this team gets to use to cover for the situational niches. And I think that's what makes it a team a lot more stronger and a lot harder to prep against.
I agree. There's even something coming down to the interaction of like the best resist for Terra Normal Extreme Speed is literally to have a Ghost type, and then you have a normal type on their team that doesn't care that you have Ghost types.
Exactly.
Easy. Easy win.
Yep.
If Arceus doesn't get you, Ursaluna just gets you instead. Oh man. Dad, did you have any closing thoughts to wrap up this team? This one's been quite a talking point so far.
No, I think we covered everything.
Alright, cool. Let us move on to the next team, which is the Dundee Darmanitans. So Ted, why don't you start us off talking about this team?
So this team utilizes the new, pretty sure the new legendary, mythical, whatever, Terapagos. What?
I said Terapagos, I was just saying, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Terapagos. Having the ability Terra Shift, which means at full HP it takes 3/4 the damage from super effective moves, so it's multi-scale in a sense of that. So it's really strong, really good defensively. I think behind screens with the Sableye is really nice with Prankster. And then on top of that, they also have Urshifu, which is a really nice pairing. Being able to crit with those Wicked Blows is really nice as well. Sylveon and Arcanine are really good, strong supporting pieces. I think Intimidate is definitely suited well for this team physically. And then Sylveon having a strong, good fairy type that's also can work as a defensive Pokemon as well is really nice. Charjabug is underrated electric type with battery, being able to boost like those special type attacks for Terapagos, Sylveon, and Galarian Articuno is really nice. Barraskewda, yeah, it's good to stop those rain abusing teams, and Propellichel to ignore priorities as well. But that's the only thing you're really going to see from it. But outside of that, like it's a really strong water type, being able to dish out liquidations as well. Galarian Articuno sets up the Trick Room and Tailwind, which is a cool duality Pokemon, I would say. And also can hit really hard on the social side, like Freezing Glare, Psychic, Air Slash, Hurricane, if you end up running Rain Dance on the Sableye. So, yeah, really strong with that. And then Sliggoo, it's really the last option outside of Torchic, which you're never going to see coming, but Sliggoo can definitely come with that Eviolite being a Steel Dragon type is really nice as well. So yeah, everything on this team can kind of accept for Torchic, so I think that's honestly a really good thing about this team. I guess like the main like weaknesses I do see is that Fairy weakness with Urshifu and Sableye. But outside of that, like there's not really much like you can see from this, and I think Terrapagos definitely fits well with the bulky aspect of this team.
Actually, you can go ahead.
Sorry, me. Sorry, I was just. I know we're filming this right now. I was just keeping up some to put out there. Some of these teams have already made trades. Team will be one of them. That's going to be different through the season. So we're reviewing a team drafted, but they've already made changes too. So I'm not going to spend too long going over this one. This is one of the few teams that have done that. It's a little bit disjointed for me personally. It's a little bit. It's got some strong pieces. Urshifu's single strike is good. Sylveon is good as a pair with it. I've seen Arcanine work with those mons pretty well as well. You got like a lot of lowish tier mons which are a bit average. Sligo Hisui is nice, not too bad. I don't know enough about Terrapagos to be able to comment on it, but it being the only mythical slash restricted on this team does feel a little bit underpowered for this team compared to other teams. I know it's got a really amazing form when it tears into like what is it, like base 700 stats something like that. So it gets like really strong, but it's the new Stellar Terra type isn't exactly the best thing. It's good, it's situational, but it's a bit okay. Charge funny thing that I found, I actually do like charge bugs. A lot of people do seem to like it. Battery really good, but it's only really boosting a couple special attackers like Terrapagos and Sylveon. The rest of them aren't really benefiting too much from it, especially like Arcanine is more support or physical attacker. Urshifu is it's supporting Galarian Articuno, but to what end? It's only really there for Terrapagos at the moment. Funny enough, Charjabug has higher base stat than Sableye, and I find that hell much than Sableye, and it's bulky in Sableye. It's so funny. So as a support bug goes. But so yeah, like the team's good. Definitely needs some changes. We admit that the team has made changes, but we're not going to go into that. Not much more else I'm really going to comment on.
Right, yeah, you guys pretty much nailed it. Yes, this team made a whole slew of changes, which you will get to see follow along with the actual season, but we won't be talking about them here. I do want to highlight the parts of the team that I do like. I do like the Terrapagos. I like the Urshifu. I also actually really like the Charjabug as just a nice bulky Eviolite support mon in a different way than I like Sableye. Like Sableye has Prankster, but I agree with like Terrapagos being so naturally bulky. I think it's easier to just kind of lean into either partners and fellow teammates that are equally as bulky and can hit reasonably to very hard, or they're really fast on one end, like offensive threats, or they're fast dedicated support threats. So I feel like if you lean a little bit more into the bulk with how heavily invested in like HP, I think Terrapagos is like what Terrastalized form is, you can get a lot of mileage out of this team. Things like Sligo Hisui at the bottom are also like perfectly fine. Like you probably will never need to bring Sligo and Charjabug into the same game, but hey, I mean you never know, right? And Sylveon is just another part of this team that I really like. Just a really solid bit of fairy offense for those fighting types that Terrapagos will not enjoy having to deal with.
I agree.
Alright, on to the next team. This is the Vegas Corbinites, coached by Anthony, aka Ant-Man. Ted, why don't you start us off?
Okay. So they do have a mythical and Mew with this, so it does count as a two versus comparing with Kieran White, at least for me. I think Kieran White fits okay with this, being Ice Dragon type. I think it covers the majority of weaknesses for this team. Like, yeah, the team is not really weak to ground as much, but it is there. I think it's a really strong special attacker with Fusion Flare and Fusion Bolts. Urshifu, Rapid Strike is really nice as well. I don't think this team is that weak to fire, so but it is there. It's really strong. Hits really hard with Surging Strikes. Getting those 3 crits is nice. Illumise and Amoonguss provide good support with Race Powder and Tailwind respectively. Encore is really annoying on Illumise. Doesn't have Disable, but Encore is something to deal with, and it's really annoying to have that. Heat Ray, really strong special attacker, being a fire type and a steel type is nice. I think the ground weakness, like I mentioned before, is covered really well with that. So it can freely choose not to Terra, or it can Terra into a grass type, depending on the situation. So yeah, I think it's really strong with that. And then like the low tier picks, I think Neor is alright. Shell Smash, next to Rage Powders as well, getting up those acrobatics, and the shield down form is going to hit really hard. Billy Bolt is another situational mon, I would say. It is an electric type, so that's always nice to have if they potentially want to go with a Trick Room mode with Mew. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's there for that. And then Marsh Stomp and Zora, so you're not really going to see them much, but Marsh Stomp could definitely come for a ground type. So yeah, I think it's another middle of the pack team. I don't think it's the greatest one, but I like the restricted mythical pairing for his team.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say that I agree with that. I like the pairing of the Mew and the Kieran fight. I've also really liked this team's Firewater Grass Core. That is the Urshifu Rapid Strike, the water one, with Heatran and Amoonguss. It's pretty solid. They're all really bulky threats. You have a really hard-hitting physical attacker and another hard-hitting special attacker, obviously, to kind of complement your Pure and White, which is nice. Mew is just a mixed bag that can kind of do just about anything. And Illumise is honestly god tier levels of support. I've had to experience that on the hard way. I would say probably the biggest weakness of this team, really, from where I'm sitting, is it's just not enough physical offense. It's actually hilariously similar to the first team, Kev's this team, where it's like there's just one very strong, potent physical attacker in the Urshifu, and then pretty much everything else that is a relevant offensive threat is probably going to run special. Now, Mew is a mixed bag in a wild card, so it can technically run physical offense. That's totally fine. And I've even seen physical Heatran like once or twice, but like Kyrium's probably pretty dedicated to running special offense, and Belly Bolt is probably also very dedicated to running special offense. So I would say this team maybe just needs like one more physical piece, but it again is built a little bit in that top heavy mindset points wise. So it's like, what do you kind of trade off to get that physical offense if you value it, of course. Matrix.
Just to bounce off the Belly Bolt comment, Belly Bolt's only got 64 attack, so I hope it being built specially. it's pretty poor on the physical side. I'll start with the low tiers actually. Minior I think is pretty cool. I think Minior is pretty nice for the team. Gives some rock and flying typings that team is kind of missing. Shield Down's a cool ability. Means it's immune to status moves until it takes half damage, and then it breaks out and becomes a faster variant of what it is. It has this Shell Smash ability as well, which is really cool. A Shell Smash move, which is cool to be paired with Amoonguss, and like it's got base. Like I don't know what its stats are with Shields Down, but it's still pretty cool regardless. Marsh Stomp I think is a bit mid, especially for a ground type. It's not the best. It's not great. I think Zora Hisui has more value for the team, honestly, because like it could easily come. It's got a base 70 speed. It's got the illusion. It's immune to fake out, and like you want to fake out bombs like Illumise, Amoonguss, and Mew and stuff like that. So like you can catch a opponent off guard with like a Scarf Sorrower or something. It's got Icy Wind on it, and it's pretty nice for a low tier, to be honest, for this team. Belly Bolt's alright, don't mind that. Mew, something we need to draw attention to is that, yeah, it's got a plethora of moves, but it's also got, I'm pretty sure it's got access to Improom, which is pretty dangerous next to Amoonguss. I'm not gonna lie. Sorry, Imprism Transform, which is pretty dangerous against next to Amoonguss. It's gonna be hard to get around. I can see a lot of matches going where, I just can't use my Mon now. That's cool. So that's kind of scary. The Mew also gets like literally every setup move. Really good partner with Amoonguss. And then what I really like is Urshifu Rapid and Cure and White. I know this team is lacking a bit of physical side, but when you look at it, Lumise gets Rain Dance. Prankster Rain Dance really boosts Urshifu Rapid up, right? Really strong. But then when you get Freeze Dry, Cure and White as well off a base 170 special attack, the only resists to water moves are Water and Grass. You've got a Freeze Dry Mon here with the strongest Freeze Dry Mon in the game. Like, you're going to be hitting so many of those Water and Grass types for so much damage. It's really going to be difficult to, like, deal with that onslaught of those stab attacks from those two mons. And even in Trick Room, like, yeah, you can't really set Trick Room up too well against this team either. Because Spore, you got Amoonguss, which gets Spore, and yeah, they've got. But it's still so slow that it's going to be sporing your Trick Room mons. And it is a little bit difficult to face. And I really like the Urshifu Rapid with Kyurem. I think it's a really good pairing of physical offense and special offense. The Illumise, Fake Tears makes that Kyurem. Ooh, that damage is insane. Same with the Heatran, but I honestly, like, Heatran's mute. Heatran usually is the focal point. Like, no, I think the Kyurem with these mons. I do agree though. I do feel like there is a get away from Urshifu Rapid and the Kyurem White. They're your strongest physical attackers. The team doesn't have any physical offense outside of that. Maybe the team wants to draft to get rid of Belly Bolt. Maybe it wants to get rid of Amoonguss. I wouldn't. Amoonguss, I think, provides a lot for Mew. So I don't really know where you'd really get that switch from. You've already got pretty low tier mons that you're not going to get any that size. So, but no, final thoughts. Really like the Urshifu, really like the Kyurem White.
Alright, let us move on to the next team. So we got plenty more to go. We're going up to the Jersey Venusaurs. Ted, why don't you start us off with this team?
Okay. So, in my opinion, I think this is one of the strongest Sun teams out of all of them in the entire draft. Mainly because of the Groudon and the Walking Wake paired together. I think Groudon as a Sunsetter and being a ground type is really nice. So having those water type attacks being reduced is so great for it. And like the supporting cast with it kind of supports it for its other weaknesses. Ceruledge kind of covers that ice and grass weakness. Being able to set up with weak armor and bulk up is really nice as well. Klefki, another way of setting up weather if you don't want to bring Groudon in, and also stopping other weather teams like rain and snow and sandstorm to an extent as well. Sneasel, Hisui, really fast fake out Pokemon. Having a unique typing in fighting and poise is really nice as well. Having, can hit really hard with like choice bands. It can also be running Eviolite as well if they want to go for a bulky option with fake out Gung Shot, fake tears, a lot of good supporting moves there. And then like being the main offensive piece here next to the Groudon, having Hydro Steam is really strong as well. Dragon Meteors, Dragon Pulse, Flamethrower, Flip Turn, Knockoff, like those are really good supporting and strong hitting moves. So that's something that you definitely have to respect here. And then having Mewtwo as well in the back to stop Trick Room potentially, if you don't want to run Trick Room on Klefki is really nice as well. And then Articuno, it's Articuno. It's there for the Tailwind support. It's also there if you do run into those snow teams potentially, or if you run into like Snowscape setup. So having the Slow Coat for that is nice as well. And Pressure is always nice. It's not good for your side, but it is definitely on your opponent's side. So yeah, those are some things you have to consider as well. And then Leafeon's a nice light chlorophyll user. I think having access to like Swords Dance, Solar Blade, Leaf Blade, and other good attacking moves is nice as well. And then Electros is a nice pairing next to Groudon. That Disquake mode is really, really strong with that. So overall, like I mentioned before, like this is the strongest, in my opinion, the strongest Sun team possible out of all the Sun teams in this draft.
Matrix, your thoughts?
Yeah, I gotta agree with Ted. I actually really like the Sun team. I think it's more balanced than all the others. I think it kind of shows how a team can be focused around being, but also get that type coverage that you kind of look for in a draft. And that's because you like look at the Fire Water Grass core. You've got a Fire Water Grass core that all work within Sun. Ceruledge, Wake, and Leafeon all work, and that's I know it's very niche, very happy like that, but it's still good. You got a special attacker, a physical setup, and physical burst. Like it's pretty good. Groundhog can run physical or special. Let's be honest. So like 150, it can be spamming eruptions. It can also be hitting with like 150 attacks. Really good. Groundhog's one of the best restricteds. I like the Mewtwo as a pair. You've got no weaknesses. They do different roles, and I think that's what's so important when you're doing these type of drafts, where you have to have 2 restricteds or 2 mythicals or whatever. You don't want to be overlapping weaknesses or typing or role with your 2 restricteds. You either want them to be complementary to one another or to have 2 distinct roles within the team. And you've got a special attacking fast Mewtwo next to a Groundhog. I think that's pretty good. The Eliatros, I really love this team, and for exactly the reasons that Ted outlined. With the fact that it's Disquake is really good with this team. Yes, it's a bit of a slow Disquake, but it's fine. The team itself is already slightly airing to ground. That's only a slight weakness. Like that's just because you have Klefki and Sneasel, which is poison type. Like it's not even the end of the world. The one thing I will say is I kind of wish Articuno wasn't there. Like I don't think Articuno really provides that much that anyone else would provide better. I don't know what the points are like or how they work. It does provide strong ice type moves and it's very defensive stats when it's not weak to rock, like through a terror or something. So it's not a bad mon by any means, and it's just I think the team could do with having a dark type. That's kind of the thing I think's just missing. Just a nice dark type. Just get a resist for Mewtwo, you know, like go for Mewtwo and Ceruledge. Like that could be really. I think that's what the team just kind of is missing at the moment. Klefki though, I love it. Klefki's one of my favorite mons. I think it team. You don't have to rely on Groundhog to set Sun. You can set Sun with Prank Setter. You can set the screen, do Trick Room, Imprison. Got Thunderwave speed control with Klefki. Got Misty Terrain, Groudon from getting burned. It's just so nice. I just love Klefki so much. So a slight bias of people there, but it's also got a Metal Sound, which isn't the worst boost mons like Walking Wake and Mewtwo. They're damage out mons. So yeah, I really like it. I do think the team will benefit largely from having a Dark type on the team. That's just me.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you said. This is also my favorite Sun team so far, but because of that multi-dimensionality, like there's offense, strong offense on both ends. There's setup moves. There's some good cleric support stuff with the Klefki, and even with the Sneasel too, you're just offering some fast fake out and some support moves there. The Electros is, even at a slow Disquake, it's just nice to have another ground immunity for switch-ins. I can see why they might have done Articuno. It might just be for like, cheap Tailwind. And you know, it's one of the few mons that gets freeze dry, so that's kind of nice if you're like going up against like rain teams and whatnot. But I could agree. I do think a Ghost resist and a Dark resist would be a little bit more of a well, Dark resist, that's not Sneasel anyway. Would be a little bit more of a pressing entity for this team. Like maybe just like honestly, maybe just like a big normal type. You have a good amount of speed control with the Klefki and with like your chlorophylls and whatnot, so you can probably afford to maybe drop the tailwind from that and pick up like a big normal type, something like that. All right, let us move on to the next team in our list. Is Cardiff Comales. What a surprise! It's another Sun team. This is like the most popular weather of the season.
Is this like the fourth Sun team now?
I think it's
I
like
feel like
fifth.
yeah, it is.
It's like it's like fourth or fifth. Okay, let's count. We had Koraidon, we've seen Torkoal, we just saw Groudon, so I guess this is probably going to be the last one because there's only 4 Sun Centers with Ninetales.
Yeah, but there was Whimsicott as well, wasn't there? Was that
that was on the Torkoal team.
Yeah.
Matrix, why don't you start talking about this team though?
Oh, brilliant, fantastic.
I'll just put it out there. I kind of rank this as the only team at the bottom of my tier list. I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't know why. I think it
doesn't really have an identity to it. I think that's the issue. Like, yeah, it's a Sun team, but it's Venusaur. You know, like it's not the Venusaur from gens gone by. It's the regular Venusaur. It's Sleep Powder, but without G-Max or any of the Max that really sought to do well in the last generation. Once we come away from Dynamax, Venusaur wasn't as hot. You know, it just didn't really do much. So I'm not a huge fan of it, especially in this format where like you don't really get a lot out of it. Wow, one gets to sleep, but that's about it. Ninetales doesn't have the most damage output itself anyway. It's a very techy mon. Really good though, in its own right. It's definitely good with the Sandy Shocks. I'll give it that. Like you got the Sun mode, and I think so. But I suppose, yeah, it's a different one. Like you've got the ice weakness between deal with it. You got the water weakness of shocks, but it also does it back. I suppose the biggest issue there is that you've got those mons, and yet your ground weakness is quite apparent. And I suppose that's kind of why the Curem's been drafted at the end as the last, the last restricted. You got the ice damage from that. I do see a lot of these teams are always repeatedly weak to ground. And I know it's a very common weakness to have. It's very hard to cover for that weakness as well. I just don't think like Skarmory's not the best mon. Mightyena isn't great. It's like Intimidate mon, short, nice and cheap. And then you've got like, I just feel like it's just like budget pick after budget pick. Like Skarm, Mightyena, Diancie's kind of mid, to be honest. It's good 150 defenses, sure, but it's not the best mon. Basculin is pretty naff, if I'm being honest. Sneasler is good, but there's a little bit of a frail side of the high tier picks, and it's not like it's really synergizing with any terrain here for the Unburden, so I suppose you're just relying on the Poison Touch more, or like self-procking Unburden. Diaclaw's good, it's like you're kind of conflicting with Sleep Powder Venusaur in that sense. Volbeat's good for like Tailwind, so that's great, but like nothing really overly benefits from being fast anyway. You've already got Chlorophyll. Sandy Shocks can boost the speed in Sun. Mightyena's not going to do much, nor Diancie. And like, yeah, you got Curem, I suppose, like 130 splits in both its offenses. But I don't know. I feel like the team's just lacking on all fronts, and I don't know what else to really say about that. I don't know if any of you guys have got more to add to that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Matrix. Like, it's definitely one of the weaker weather teams. Venusaur is not the greatest this generation, even with Terra. It's just kind of there for the Sun mode with next to Ninetales. Sandy Shocks definitely does benefit from the Sun with photosynthesis, but that's pretty much it for like the rest of the team. I think, like you said, like everything else doesn't really synergize well next together. They're just kind of just budget picks to stop certain weaknesses. I guess like Kirib and Diancie are okay, being the restricted pairing, but other than that, they don't really do much. Like freeze dry is always nice, just have those water types, but you already have Venusaur and Sandy Shocks. And then Caesar, like you said, like it's just super frail. Like there's nothing much you can really do about it. Fake Out is nice though. Dark Claw is situational as well. So yeah, I just think it's just one of those lower end weather teams. We could see some success from it, but I just think for now, like it's just very a low end team.
It's a very uphill battle, is what I feel with this team, especially when your
Yeah.
best mon is like Curem and Sandy Shocks. Sandy Shocks are good, but when those are like your best mons, it becomes difficult.
That's kind of fair. I think the one thing that I find difficult about this team, it definitely has some cool mon choices on it. Like I actually really like Ninetales. It happens to be my favorite Sunsetter. Ninetales, Sandy Shocks, Volbeat are all really strong pieces on this team, and I'm not even that mad about Basculin. I think it's fine where it is in the low tiers, just for some quick, hard-hitting offense. But actually, one of my biggest issues, surprisingly, is that the two restricted mods, Mythicals, what have you, are actually like both weak to steel, bar Terra. And yes, while this is a Sun team, and you know, being weak to steel is conventionally not thought of as a bad thing when you're like running a Sun team, I think this team may struggle a little bit with like some well-positioned either steel offense, barring Terra, obviously, coming from mods that are otherwise well equipped to deal with this team. Like something bulky can handle a lot of the offense that some of these guys can put up pretty cleanly.
Yeah, just the thing for me is that I think this is a nice team in a non-restricted form, but in a format that's including restricted, you sub out Dancy for a Carbink. At the end of the day, Dancy's good for like body press shenanigans and stuff like that, like really high defense. It's got some good special attack at 100, don't get me wrong, defensive. And you swap Curum out for like say Excalibur, and you've got a decent team that is well suited for a restricted format in a like mid to high, just below the highest tier power. But in a format that is full of restricteds and mythicals, I just don't know if this matches the power that the teams need.
Well, I know I personally suffered from that when I drafted my team last season, so we'll see what the Kamalas can actually make of their draft. But we're going to push on to the Chicago Cinderace, who have, I would say, one of the more creative drafts so far, mostly because they drafted a mod that is technically unreleased in Petrarunt. It is down there on the bottom right corner, right next to the logo. It hasn't been technically released in game, so this coach can't actually use it until it's like able to be caught and like actually utilized. So they're effectively playing with a Iron Mod team until that happens. Ted, why don't you walk us through it? I believe Petrarunt is Poison Ghost.
Yeah, Poison Ghost. So I'll go over Petrarunt first, and then I'll go over the rest of the team. So as if you guys don't know already, Petrarunt's ability is basically a toxic chain that also confuses and has a chance of just basically toxic chain that has a chance of confusion. It's a really annoying Pokemon with Puppeteer, but having a unique typing with Poison and Ghost is really nice for this team, I think, personally. Having no restricted pairing, just the two mythical Pokemon in Shaman Sky and the Petrarunt, I think is really unique for this team. Now for the rest of the team, I think the Firewater Grass score is really strong. I think Blaziken, although this is not singles and, you know, it's there for that, but I think Speedos is really nice. Having no definitive tailwind outside of Shaman Sky is really nice for the speed tiers. Primarina, really nice bulky water fairy type is nice as well. Liquid Voice, you know, boosting up those hyper voices. Having that instant water stab is nice. And then Shaman Sky, really hacksy Pokemon. with Serene Grace and Seed Flare. Air Slash with the King's Rock is super annoying to deal with if you're not prepared to deal with that. Tornadus, really strong Prankster Pokemon with Thunder Wave, Swagger, Rain Dance. Just name a few moves is really strong for this team. Can hit pretty hard on the special side with Thunderbolt and Dark Pulse and Wild Storm. And then Copperajah is a really strong Trick Room Pokemon next to the Gothitelle. So yeah, that's another mode that opposing teams deal with. And speaking of Gothitelle, having that fake out option is nice. Trick Room is nice as well for those slower end Pokemon like Copperajah and Primarina. It's nice as well. And then Shadow Tag, although it's not something particularly well this team will like, it is there to trap in your opponents from switching out that otherwise would want to switch out it like in front of like either like a Pecharunt or a Shaman Sky. So that's something to utilize. And then the lower tiers, they're kind of meh. Diplin is for its super sweet syrup is nice for lowering evasion. It's not something you would commonly see, but it is there. Quilladin is nice there for a low tier grass type, although the Firewater Grass core is already there and it's better than Quilladin. I think it's nice Eviolite uh, with the Diplin, but that just kind of doubles up quite a lot for that ice weakness. So I think it's just one of those main weaknesses that this team struggles with, but they do have ways of dealing with it. And then Flabebe is a low tier fairy type that you won't really see as much.
Alright, I'll jump in. Yeah, aside from the comments about Pecharunt, I do like I would say the creativity behind some of this team's choices. That Firewater Grass Core with the Shaman Sky, the Primarina, and the Blaziken that's some fun stuff. Some really strong special offense and physical from the Blaziken there. Also opens some funny stuff with like Serene Grace and pledge moves and whatnot, and then Gothitelles just kind of lock you down and make you really reconsider your lead choices is pretty strong. But let's not even worry about those top four. I really like the addition of Thundurus to this team, and I'm gonna tell you why. I think Thundurus supports this team's strongest attackers in general, in various different ways. Just getting some good speed control on the board. You have like Rain Dance from the Primarina. You can have Sunny Day if you want to go that route, and just like really solid speed control while also boasting offensive presence, so that it's not just a pure support mon. I think make it a valuable pick on this team. Same with kind of the Copperajah, like it's just like you have so many hard-hitting special attackers, and then you still pick up some solid physical offense in the Copperajah and the Thundurus. Diplin's a great Eviolite user. Sticky Hold can't be knocked off, and we've already seen what it can kind of do. And then you have like Quilladin and Flabebe. Not really gonna count Flabebe, sorry. Not sorry, but Quilladin is definitely proven to be useful in certain matchups. Matrix?
I don't see the point of Quilladin. Like, and I'm a big Quilladin stan, but like, same with Diplin. Like, I get why there's Diplin there. I think it's cool. You can go for its move, the speed dropping move. Really helps support like Shaman, Primarina to really like do their thing. Like, it's encouraging ice against the team. Like, Shaman's already trying to avoid being hit by like Scarf Icy Winds or like ice type moves, and then there's Diplin there just encouraging an extra ice type coverage to come. The team is already slightly weak to ice. Like, yeah, you got Blaziken that can deal with ice and Primarina resist, but other one a bit like shaky, Copper as well, I suppose. But what I do like about the team is you can see like this. We're trying to create this team around status and trapping and doing that type of scenario. So like, you've got the Thundurus with T-Waves, pair that with Serene Grace Shaman, really right? That's really annoying to do. Especially if like Thundurus is swapped out with Gothitelle with Shadow Tag, and you're just supposed to be paired with the Gothitelle can also be paired up with Pecharunt, or whatever it's called, and you've got that mon that does the toxic chain thing, and then toxic, and your Shadow Tags you can't swap out, So there's a lot of infuriating techniques, the tactics that Gothitelle kind of imposes upon you. I don't actually like the Copperage that much. I know Copperage is there with the Gothitelle. Copperage does defensively provide what the team needs. I just don't really. I don't know. Maybe I think there's a better steel type to be added. I'm not sure. I can understand that the steel type is really needed. Look at the mons that they've got. Outside of the Petrarant and the Copperage, their team is really weak to being hit just by poison type moves. And maybe that's a result of there being so many fair on the team. 5 in total. But like they don't have any resist outside of that because they don't have any ground types. And if they do have a ground type, then they're adding up onto the it's really difficult to do. But maybe they want to extra for a ground type, you know. Speaking of, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, otherwise, everything else that you guys have said, I've agreed with as well, and I do feel like I keep going to the negatives of teams. But like, I think the Gothitelle is really good on this team. I think it provides a glue between the two most defensively annoying. Primarina is really good damage, pairs well with a Thunderous, as does Blaziken pair with Thunderous. Blaziken's really good at breaking through what the team struggles with offensively. And for the most part, I think the team's pretty nice. I think it's unique, I think it's novel. I do like what they're trying to do. There's just a few tweaks here and there that I just feel could be made to just make it a little bit better.
That's definitely valid. Alright, let us move on to the next team. Is going to be the Sacramento Sandslash. And before getting into this team, I want to contextualize it by saying that this is Pat Mac's team. You know Pat Mac, you love Pat Mac. He's the owner of this lovely server called the Game Room that is hosting this draft. But a group of us, Brave leading the charge, fellow mod, actually drafted this team for him. Completely blind, he had no idea what was being drafted for him. So I did actually ask him to give us a small quote about like what his reaction was and what his reaction was to the final team, and also just going through the process in general of like having a draft go on for you and not really being able to like contribute or have any knowledge in any way. So I'm just going to read that first before we sort of dissect the team. So Pat Mac says, I've played in multiple high-powered leagues such as Mythical Mayhem. Combining singles and doubles leagues, I've played in at least 10 high-powered leagues, and I'm excited to play in the season of Mythical Mayhem as well. Brave asked if he can draft my team for this season, and at first I was admittedly hesitant. Brave doesn't typically like high-powered leagues, so I wasn't sure what I would end up with. My only parameters were to not draft restricted mods I'd used in previous doubles leagues, and with that, I muted the draft and chat channels to avoid spoilers. When the draft ended and Brave revealed my team to me, I was ecstatic. He drafted an amazing team that I'm very excited to use this season. I probably wouldn't have drafted most of the mods that Brave drafted, which just makes the team all that more exciting to use this season.
Nice quote.
Yeah?
Definitely sounds like Pat's excited to use the team. I think what's best at this point, because both you and I helped draft the team, Miss Mag, I think it's best if we hear from Ted his thoughts, and then maybe we can chip in afterwards and explain some reasonings for picks and stuff.
I completely agree. So Ted, take it away.
Okay. So, as I was looking at this team being drafted during the draft, since spoiler, I am in this draft. I like the Chien-Pao and Zacian. Although Zacian is not the crown form, it is the hero form. I think both of those pairs together is really, really nice. Zacian being just purely fairy typing is nice as well. I think next to the Sword of Rune, being able to get that boost with Play Rough, Iron Heads, close combat, stuff like that is really nice next to Chien-Pao. There's definitely other abusers, like the Entei and the Rayquaza, which is the second researched on this team. I think those two, again, Nexus Ashian and Shinpao, is really nice. Both of those being extreme speed users, so you can just tear normal next to Shinpao and just spam that if there are no immunities like ghost types. I think the support system with those four is really nice as well. Electabuzz gaining access to Follow Me again this generation through DLC number 2 is nice as well. Static is really annoying to deal with. And Vital Spirit is also nice to stop Sleep Powder and Spore. So, there's something to deal with as well. And then Swampert is a really good ground type for this team, I feel, that would otherwise struggle with like other ground type attacks. So being able to take those hits really nice is good as well. Haunter is a nice low tier pick. Having Levitate is nice as well. Again, another way of negating that ground weakness is nice. Having to stop Trick Room is nice with it as well. Having like Scarf Icy Winds and Shadow Balls is nice as well. Cacturn is a nice low tier grass type. It's not my favorite grass type. I felt like that pick could definitely be better, but it just makes sense with the team composition with this. And it also being a dark type is nice as well for this team. Pseudomin is a nice low tier fighting type as well, having Defiance, being able to, negate, like deter away those intimidates and parting shots, stuff like that is nice as well. And then Probopass is a nice steel type. It is rock type, is 4 times super effective fighting, but I think it's a nice add-on to this team. The team is pretty fast, but they do have those low tier speed end picks. So they Brave for drafting and not liking high restricted Pokemon. I think he drafted really well for Patmac, and I'm excited to actually see how well he does with this team throughout the season. I guess Matrix can go.
Yeah, Matrix will jump in first.
Cool. So yeah, as stated, both me and Miss Mag helped draft this team alongside Brave. I was more the ideas guy, along with Miss Mag, and Brave would choose which idea he liked the best, and he also provided his own ideas. Like Shenpao was all Brave. I think this team. I'm just going to go over what I like about the team more so than how we drafted. I really like the Shenpao paired with Zacian. Obviously, it's kind of self-explanatory, isn't it? Intrepid Sword user paired with Sword of Ruin. It's like you're gonna get a high damage there. But what's really cool about it is Zacian really weak with got a fairy attacker. You've got Entei, which is an extreme speed user. We've seen extreme speed paired with Shenpao. Now we've got both Entei and Rayquaza, or Rayquaza, or however you pronounce it. 150 base attack. Rayquaza is Dragonite on steroids on the physical, on the offenses. A little bit weaker on the defenses, but that's okay if you're getting the KOs. What's cool about the Rayquaza though, and a lot with the rest of this team, is that yes, there's a high physical attack, but it's also got a high special attack, and that's a theme is apparent through the entire team. Where you've got mons like Swampert, Rayquaza, Entei, they all have the ability to switch to a special set. So they're not always having to rely on Shenpao's and the physical attackers. So that's really good to be able to, the fact that it's multifaceted on type of offense that the team is trying to output, and what mon is going physical and what mon is going special. The Cacturn, I agree, isn't the best mon. Admittedly, it was supposed to during the draft towards the end, and I think it did look better, but it did allow us to get the Simeon onto the team, which is really important because for a team that's so heavily invested in physical offense, we've got Entei, which can't be burned and it can't be intimidated thanks to inner focus, but we've now also got a Defiant user who turns intimidated altogether. So Zacian and Shenpao was able to run a little bit more wild, or a little bit more threatening. The Probopass and the Haunter are pretty nice picks in general as well. Nice low tier Seal type, and Haunter is actually a pretty good special attacker, and a kind of a special like the type of special offense that the team would be missing otherwise. It's kind of reliant on Rayquaza for being the highest damaging Cacturn is above base 100. So although there is that mixed attacking facet across the team, it's still a little bit on the weaker side, being special, like not as specially attacking as you want it to be, but enough considering your main mode of offense is going to be coming from the piggybacking off your high tier Sheer Power with the sort of room. We've already said about the static of the Electabuzz, and I think Electabuzz really helps this team out. You require you at a like set of positions. Miss Mike.
Yeah, I can't really add too much onto what's been said. Like, yes, the very apparent physical threats on this team will be probably the ones that you zero in on prep, as they are demanding, or I should say they are commanding the most respect, just seeing that top 4 kind of by themselves. And then the other 6, like, they nicely can facilitate that strategy. I actually think that, yes, Exeggutor would have been a nicer fit on this team just for some more dedicated special offense, but I think we actually kind of got the better of the deal long term by having like Passimian on the team and Cacturn. Cacturn just adding some more priority that we could use with Chien Pao to the team, and just a unique set of moves that in its move pool, but just a hard hitting fighting type. Just slap an Assault Vest on it. Passimian gets plenty of coverage. Like, there's definitely matchups where, like, you know, that and a good defensive Terra can be utilized super well. You still have the Howl strats on the Zacian and whatnot. Like, there's just so much options that can do that, and that's not even thinking about things like receiver that can be utilized to our advantage as well. But overall, I would say we found the best balance of Pokemon to fit our needs. You know, despite the Exeggutor going that we really wanted.
I do think that the team kind of also represents like a well-balanced team throughout the tiers, despite there being like a restricted amount of points. Like, you've got high tier pressure, but like even the low tiers, nearly every single mon fights a purpose to some degree that we don't always see across all the other team. Additionally, I just want to point out Rayquaza also has airlock, good for the air weather. So
yeah, no, for sure. And the most important thing is that, you know, the coach who is going to be piloting this team, Pat McKee, is very pleased with what we came up with. And, you know, even though we're not really taking coach style into account for this power rankings, I would say that knowing him, and since he came into this completely blind, I think this will actually mesh fairly well with how he likes to play. And even as you just said, it's a pretty balanced team as far as like the speed tier, as far as like the collective mons per tier is concerned. With that, we're gonna move on. We got a few more teams to go, so we're gonna try to power on through. We got the Snickers Bar as our next up. I'll just jump in real quick. I actually really like this team. There's like maybe like 2 mons in the team I don't like, and they're the two baby mons. But I really like this team. This is probably like easily one of my top 5 favorite teams.
I have one issue with the team really, and that's it. But go ahead.
Yeah, I think the Zamazenta Crowned and the Lunala pairing has got to be like my favorite restricted duo that I would have probably never expected to see at all. And I like both of those mons pretty well individually, but I can't wait to see what Snickers ends up doing with them like together. The Fire Warner Duskcore is like really cool. I actually really like that he picked up on the Magmar right after we got the Electabuzz. EV8 Flame Body Follow Me just kind of does stuff, helps support the team. Superior is very easily going to abuse Stellar Contrary at various points, or regular Contrary with Leaf Storm, giving it +2 every time it clicks an offensive move. And Iron Bundle is Iron Bundle. I really have hated that mon over like the entirety of the generation, but I'm slowly coming around to liking it. It's annoying, but like it's good at what it does. And my favorite part of the team outside of the 2 restrictions is that Mudsdale Thunderous Therian combination. I think that is a fantastic Disquake mode. But yeah, Matrix, I'll toss it over to you.
Yeah, no, I really like the team. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just that I like the Fire War Grass Core. Maybe I like the restricted. Maybe I like the disconnect mode. Yeah, it's 7 mons. Yeah, it could be more deeper than just having a 2-1-1 as your final combination. I actually think Hatchim's not worst. 2-point mon, it has uses, like
It's
very
not.
limited,
I've
but it has
I've
uses.
used it before. I've used it before. It's a surprisingly good mod for that tier, actually.
Exactly. The issue I have with this team, and it's always going to be coming down to tactics. And I understand there's terror, but there's only so far terror can take you. And I just wish the team had like a ghost resist. You've got a Lunala there, which is 4 times weak to ghosts, and that means you're having to tear out his weakness. I know it's got Shadow Shield, but ways of proccing it prior to, and I don't like having to force the terror to get rid of like a glaring weakness or something. I just wish that this team had either a dark type or a normal type. That's all. That's basically where the where it goes. This team, like other teams, doesn't really have fake out either. It has Esper, but like I've never mentioned that on all the other teams. I'm not that bothered if a team has fake out or not. I think a team can personally. But I do think you could do with like a normal type or a dark type, especially a normal type. For Lunala. I know that kind of conflict, but like, it's just something I think that's needed. Ted?
Yeah, I think you guys covered pretty much everything I wanted to say. I think the restricted pairing is really, really strong. I'm a big fan of it. I think having to necessarily really tear out the Lunala just to get out of that ghost weakness is kind of bad for it. That's the only negative I have about this team. But other than that, I think this team is really solid. I think Superior with the contrary ability is nice with Terra Fire, or using the Stellar typing is nice as well. Arm Bundle for speed control with Icy Wind is nice as well. And then, support with Follow Me, Flame Body is really strong for this. So, yeah, other than the low tiers, I think overall the team is really, really strong.
Well, with that being said, let's get into our next team. This one should look awfully familiar to someone here. The Meteor Shower Dragapults, coached by Ted himself. I'll jump in on starting to talk about this team. I have to say this is probably like my second favorite Firewater Grass core in the entire draft. I think Gouging Fire, the Grass Arceus, and the Empoleon they're just like really cool mons to put together. Like the competitive really helps you deter wanting to intimidate the Gouging Fire or even the Arceus, and then they kind of just like really balance each other nicely type wise. The Steel typing from the Empoleon actually helps with the fact that your Fire type does not resist Fairy moves, and is also helps it be neutral to ice, like, not weak to flying, like resist flying. Like, there's so many like little intricacies in that 3-mon core, and I like the Tornado Spread with it because all 3 of them can be offensive threats in their own rights. I also really do like Hitmonchan and Electivire as standout support picks. Electivire also still has Follow Me. Does not gain doesn't get static, but gets like Vital Spirit and Photo Drive and stuff like that. Hitmonchan, Inner Focus, Fake Out, a lot of good fighting support moves. Use that model out last gen. Great choice. And then after that, I start kind of like falling off. Like Impidimp, yeah, it's got screens and Prankster, yeah, that's fine. Not a huge fan of Porygon or the Alolan Dugtrio. Skuntank is interesting. I don't hate it, but I feel like it's just another ground weakness that this team really does not need when 3 of those top 6 are weak to ground by itself. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm really digging the top 6 for sure. But those last 4 down there leave me a little weary. Matrix.
Yeah, so as I was saying to Ted prior to recording this, I was going over his team with him, and I love his Firewall. And that's just because that's more personal preference than anything else. As you say, it's really goodly competitive and with the aiding the Arceus and the Gouging Fire. I think defensively they all cover each other really well. think that one of the best ones for for encountering fire to be better.
Yep. Yeah, he cut out for a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, it's alright. Well, maybe he'll probably come back. Ted, why don't you just jump in real quick and give some initial thoughts, or even just like brainstorms, like where you kind of crafted this team from.
So yeah, definitely as I went through the draft and I sort of assembled the team together, the ground weakness is apparent. However, there wasn't much I could really do about that. It was just kind of something I had to deal with. I'm actually a big fan of the Porygon. I'm not forced to run Eviolite on the Impidip, so having Eviolite just solely on the Porygon is really nice. I think it's a great way of getting like turning Trick 'em as well. Um, it's a great normal type. Like yeah, it is weak to fighting, but it is one of my ways of dealing with those ghost types as well, being immune to that. So I think that's probably one of my better picks, I would say, in my opinion, for the lower tiers. But yeah, I do agree with you guys. Like the Skunk Tank and the Lone Dog Trio, like it just kind of induces more for my opponents to bring ground types. Um, I wish there was better options, but maybe there will be later down the line. So I may have ways of fixing that, but for right now, it's just something that I have to deal with. And I just think solely like those main 6 Pokemon on their own and all together are definitely going to be carrying me throughout the season. And yeah, I'm super excited to use the team.
I'm back. Can you hear
Very
me?
cool.
Yeah, you're good.
Cool. Sorry, my computer ran out of battery. So, just to finish off what I was saying and bouncing off what Ted was saying, I actually don't mind the Porygon here. Like, I agree with him. Like, it's decent. And as you've already said, like, my major issue comes from the fact that there's quite an apparent ground weakness. And funny enough, also a bit of a fighting weakness to the team. So outside of Tornadus, you don't have any resist. So it's kind of like getting hit hard by both ground and fighting types across the team. I do think I personally would love to see a ghost type on your team. I think you've got enough like ghost and dark resist that you could have a ghost type. I don't know where you'd fit it or how you'd fit it, but I do think you would benefit from that.
Yeah, I can agree with that. A good ghost type, particularly one with levitate, would be very helpful. I know that is pretty much a dime a dozen. In the lower tiers, I think someone literally just picked up Skull actually. So
Yeah.
that was like my first instinct that I remember. I think I was talking to someone who just decided to pick that up. But like a ghost type with levitate, I would agree, would help patch up that ground and fighting current weakness that is there.
Trevenant also would, but like that also opens up the avenue of the fire weakness that he'd be getting, considering his water type doesn't resist fire. So like it's really difficult to patch that.
Yeah, I do think like at some level you do have to make some forgivenesses in prep, and then I would also argue that like to some degree maybe changing out the RCS typing if you go the Trevenant route, because I just don't think on this particular team you would want like double grass types, because it also makes you extremely weak to flying. Given that you would have Hitmonchan and 2 grass types. I mean, it's not that bad, but
you gotta follow me Electivire and Empoleon. And if anything, I'd rather have a fire weakness than a ground / fighting, because you've got the option of having a Rain Dance Tornadus to reduce that damage down further. But that's here nor there.
Yeah, I just might change out the type to see if I was to go the Trevenant route, maybe change the RCS type into something I could get a little bit more versatility out of. I just don't really see too many matches where you would bring double grass types, but that might just be my own personal bias talking. But yeah. Let's move on to. I really like this team. I saw like as soon as I saw that top row being crafted, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a sick team. So thank you, Ted, for not disappointing.
You're welcome.
Alright, let's move on to the second to last team in the draft, which is the Chillin' Chespins. And yeah, I think I'll just jump in to start with this team. This is probably the definition of top heavy. Like, it's super top heavy. Like, those top 6 mons are coming pretty much every week. Squawk ability may come every once in a while. Pikachu might actually come every once in a while. I'd be surprised if Larvesta ever comes. And big points for him drafting his mascot. We like seeing mascot pick, but going to those top 6, that is a very Trick Room centric team. But it also at the same time has the side spam elements because Hoopa Unbound got expanding force. And at the same time, it also has a slight tailwind access mode because of the squawk ability, so you can't actually sleep on this mode, on this team just only operating in Trick Room, because then DD plus squawk ability will get tailwind up a little bit more reliably than you might think it should, and then that just leaves like these really strong bulky sweepers in the back room to kind of blitz you. But I actually don't hate this team as far as like really extremely top heavy teams go. I think it is just well balanced enough that it can probably get away with doing the same thing or similar things each week and really start picking up the wins. Let's also over the Matrix. What do you think?
So far we've had like, I think this is only the second like Trick Room heavy team. And I can see exactly like how the team would love to be played. You've got the Incineroar and Indeedee female, you've got Parting Shot while setting Trick Room, and Intimidating. You get your Ursaluna in for basically unscathed damage, or you do Incineroar plus Dialga and go for Trick Room. Then you've got Dialga and Ursaluna inside Trick Room with a debuffed opponent while getting you've got Flame Orb off. So I can see a lot of that type of synergy going on. You've got the Scarf Hooper Unbound with the Indeedee to get that fast expanding forces off. Like base 80 is a pretty scarfable speed for Unbound to be running. And I can see Araquanid being that really good defensive piece. It covers for the fighting weakness and the slight ground weakness that the team has. Like the team is pretty weak to fighting, even though it's a psychic terrain team, and that's because both your psychic types aren't resistant. It's then both neutral. Funny enough, the team I found it doubles up on a lot of types. Like you've got 2 normal types, you've got it's not loads of it, but 2 normal, 2 psychic. Funny enough, I suppose you have 2 bugs and fire, even though Larvesta doesn't count. 2 dark types. It just seems to be a little bit of doubling in that regard. 3 normal types, if I'm not mistaken. Admittedly, none of them share a weakness due to their normal typing, but it's still a point to be made. I think when I was looking at it initially, I was thinking you kind of get hit by the same moves, like flying, fighting. Bug actually hits the team pretty well. If you remove Araquanid from it, like the team gets hit pretty much by the same moves. I don't, although I think it's very good at getting the damage dealers in, like Dialga and Ursaluna, Incineroar being a really good pivot and good debuffer support with Follow Me Indeedee. I just kind of feel like the team isn't as well rounded as the other Trick Room team. That's just comparing the 2 of those, but otherwise it's pretty nice. Like Ursaluna and Araquanid both don't care about burns or being able to be burned or Incineroar, so that's really nice on that side of things. Intimidate is probably your best bet against it. You got the Psychic Terrain, so at least when you are in Trick Room, your Trick Room mons are going to be moving first. So there's that side of things, which is really nice. Ed, have you got any input?
No, I think you guys covered pretty much everything I wanted to say. I think the trigger mode is really strong. It's really definitely apparent for this team. The low tier picks are quite concerning, but that's to be expected for a top heavy team. Props for him for drafting Chespin as the mascot pick. Like Miss Wax said, like Sock Ability and Pikachu can definitely come from week to week. So that's something you do have to respect as well for like Fake Out and Tailwind on that respect. So yeah, overall really strong Trick Room team. Ursuluna is really scary, having to deal with Guts and Flame Orb. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think the Araquanid's really good for the wide card as well. That's something else I forgot to mention. Like, to get around, follow me, what do? You bring spread moves. Araquanid is a really good defensive piece on the team that'll be running wide cards. So there is a lot to like about the team. The speeds are a little bit disappointing. Like, it is Trick Room or Bust, almost. Like, base 92, Squawkability is the fastest. And they're all pretty much like that 90 through 60 range until you get to the 50 42, which is Ursaluna and Araquanid. It's very Trick Room centric. It's very much they need Trick Room or they need to be bulky, but they're never going to be hitting first on the first turn, basically.
That being said, let us get to the last team of the draft. We finally made it down to number 22, and that's going to be Toronto Ticketing's coached by Bread Pudding Official. I think I'll pass it over to Ted. What do you think of this team?
So this is an interesting team that Bread has drafted. I think they were pairing with Duskmane and Palkia is an interesting thing to be drafting. Steel and Psychic and Dragon and Water is an interesting combination together. I think they both cover each other's weaknesses quite well. Obviously, Palkia covers that ground weakness with its water typing, and then Solgaleo covers the fairy weakness and the freeze dry weakness with its steel typing. So that's really nice to have. I think the supporting pieces is nice as well. Hitmontop with Intimidate and Fake Out is nice, and Wide Guard so you can stop those dazzling gleams is nice as well. Kilowattra with Tailwind is always appreciated as well. You're not forced to having that Trick Room variant of Palkia, and Dustmane is nice as well. Rillaboom and Arcanine, I think those two pair up well next to each other. Obviously, Grassy Terrain stops that ground weakness for Arcanine, and Intimidate Pressure outside of Hitmontop is nice as well. And then a secondary Fake Out with Rillaboom is also appreciated with this team. And even like the low tier picks are nice as well. I know Miss Mag is a big fan of its little form, Mischievous. Really good Levitate Eviolite user. Another way of setting up Trick Room outside of Decimate is nice as well. Priority Tailwind with Fletchling is also a thing as well. You're not going to see it because Kilowatt was that main supporting for Tailwind, but it is there and you have to respect it coming into certain matchups. Wigglytuff, nice fairy type, low tier fairy type with Frisk is nice as well. Another Pokemon you can use it under Trick Room, and being a really low tier fairy type is nice as well for that utility aspect. And then finally, Palisand. Ground and Ghost typing is interesting as well. The team is not particularly weak to fighting type, but it is good under Trick Room. Water compaction is nice as well. They don't have like Aqua Jets or Water Shuriken, on this team, but it is there to take up those water type attacks, if only one. So yeah, I guess it's good in that aspect. And overall, I think it's a pretty solid team that Brett drafted. I don't think it's the best team ever, but it's definitely a solid one.
I just want to jump in before Miss Mag jumps in on that one. You were saying about the Fletchling won't ever really come. I do think that with Red it is possible. Like Fletchling comes with the Gale Wings to boost up Kilowattral's wind power is a possibility. So you can see them two coming together. So I don't want to discredit the potential for wind power there. I really like the double competitive on Kilo and Wigglytuff because you've got Rillaboom and Arcanine and Hitmontop all Intimidate weak as well as Necrozma, I'm pretty sure, because this one doesn't have the ability that stops the stat drop, does it?
Yeah.
What does it have as its ability to do? I can never remember.
It's prison armor, so it takes 3/4 damage
Yeah.
from super effective hits.
Yeah, it's basically solid rock, isn't it, or something?
Yeah, exactly. Solid rock.
Yeah, so like again, that's a mon that can be intimidated. So I really like the plethora of intimidate deterrents. I think the Palkia and the Necrozma, brilliant combo. Really defensively complement each other and role-wise complement each other really well. The fact that either one of them can set Trick Room as well is really nice. So you'll see that being pretty difficult to handle, I think. Arcanine and Rillaboom also being on this team, as well as having some really good low tier picks, is pretty good. Like Grassy Terrain for that recovery and like utility that Rillaboom can offer is good. The Mischievous you've already touched upon. I'm not too fussed about the Palisand personally. Honestly, I don't think the team even needed a ground type looking at it. Like they've got plenty of ground coverage. I kind of think that the team could have benefited from a dart type again, not gonna lie. Just slightly. Those types can be annoying to deal with, and we've got Calyrex Shadow in this league, haven't we? So, you know, a nice dart type would have helped to mitigate that dark, slightly ghost weakness that they have. They've only really got Wigglytuff as a switch in. So that's that. But otherwise, team's looking pretty nice. Like, slightly weak ice in places, but honestly, with those restricted, I'm not even that worried about it. I really like the team otherwise. Really good cause.
Yeah, I would agree with what you guys have said. It's funny that you had chimed in because I was actually going to also point out that wind power interaction. So good knowledge on that, because I can definitely see a week where you just soup up that kilo and let it kind of go a little bit crazy. But I do like what Brett has crafted. It's a very bulky offense-oriented team. Like many of these mons will require multiple hits to take down, probably barring the two flying types, honestly. But many of these mons have a good amount of bulk on their side. So I think he's crafted, and he's you got the double intimidate kilo. I think it gets Eerie Impulse. Like he's got so many ways to kind of like debuff you and keep his bulk going. That it's gonna be a challenge to kind of take this team down. I won't sugarcoat it. It's probably very much it might struggle a little bit, like you said, with the like really strong ice moves, but I feel like you have to kind of get like a momentum advantage to really capitalize on that.
Yeah, and it's got like it's not just that defensively that they're really good. They've got good speed tiers, good mixed offenses, and like good priority options as well. Like fair enough, most of the priority options are all physical, but like they've got Grassy Glide, Extreme Speed, Mock Punch, like Bullet Punch. Like it's pretty well rounded for a team. Like for a team that's got some decent high tier picks, it's pretty well balanced.
Yep. I would agree with that. And again, the low tiers on this team are some of the most solid ones on the sales board. Alright, so we've gotten to the end of the 22 coaches participating in this draft. We have 3 more teams to show you. Some of our mods, myself included and Matrix included, we took what was left over on the draft board after grace period ended, and we drafted our own teams. So you're welcome to hit one of us up if you would like to just, do an exhibition for fun. Yes, exhibition for fun, just hit one of us up. But we randomized our own draft order and whatnot, so I ended up getting first pick. So this is my team that I drafted from scraps left over. Since Ted is probably the only one here who has not seen any of these teams, I want Ted to start us off.
Okay, so I've seen this core with Iron Crown and Indeedee male instead of female, just mostly because of the offense that male has over Indeedee male. I think those two together is really nice. But having no access to follow me is a little bit of an issue. I would say probably female would definitely be better next to Iron Crown, because that's something you would definitely see in VGC currently. But I think probably from an offensive standpoint, I think those two together are nice. Zamazenta Hero, no steel typing, so it's just pure fighting. Um, it's alright. Getting the defense boost is nice as well. You can utilize Howl to boost up your own attack stat and your partner's attack stat. So I think that's good. Galarian Wheezing and Regigigas, the return of this annoying mode. It's not the same as it was in Dynamax, but I think it does it right here. I think Terra Regigigas is kind of scary, like especially like a defensive Terra typing or an offensive Terra typing like Terra Normal or Terra Fury. Something of that nature is really scary. Dugong is a nice utility pick. Having a unique trait, having it has fake out. So yeah, that's a really unique trait that it has. I think it's really good utility pick in the lower tiers. The Lando Incarnate, I think it's a right special attack. It's an alright special attacker. I think Sandseer Storm is nice with this team. I'm not a particularly huge fan of it, but I think with the rest of the team composition, it's alright. Appleton is okay as well. It's the team is not like trick room heavy, but it is kind of is within DD and the Iron Crown. So I can definitely see a world where it definitely comes in certain matchups if it were a regular season team. And then Zebstrika is another good Motor Drive Pokemon. It has 3 good abilities: Motor Drive, Lightning Rod, and Sap Super. 2 of those are basically the same. They work the same way, except one draws in electric type moves, the other one doesn't. But again, regardless, 3 good abilities. Can be a mixed attacker as well, so that's something that you could definitely utilize. And then Crocolore is a good low tier Eviolite Pokemon with Unaware, so yeah, you can stop certain Pokemon and half their damage with that. So yeah, overall, really solid team. Not the best team, I would say, but it definitely has good working components to it.
Just for ease of time, because these aren't actual teams in the real season, I'll just summarize briefly. Kind of cool to see that some cool modes like the Cycle Terrain mode, Expanded Force, and Regigigas Squeezing, still mons that are on the draft board and readily available to be drafted by teams if they want some cool combinations. As you say, the Zebstrika I think is pretty nice. It's a pretty low tier electric type that has two ability immunities. And Zacian Hero is underrated, and like Zacian Crown's pretty good, obviously, but Hero has the item flexibility, and isn't weak to fighting at last round, so that's pretty nice. But for this team, it's also only running 1 restricted, so it's a little bit lower powered there. However, you do have Regigigas, so.
Yep. Alright. Next up, this is the team that Brave ended up drafting in our little scraps draft. We'll kind of, I think actually, also in just essence of time, just I wouldn't mind just hearing from Ted for the most part for these, since he hasn't seen them.
I fully agree.
Okay. Yeah, this is another interesting team. Zekrom is interesting as well with its Terravolt. It's an alright ability. Being electric and dragon, like it does have a plethora of weaknesses, but I think it's really good offensively. Like running a Dragon Dance set is really nice as well. Like Bolt Strike and Dragon Claw were its main stabs with that. The Screamtail, basically the ultimate supporting Pokemon, you could say. It's really annoying with Disable Encore. It's really hard to deal with and hard to take out if it tears as well. So that's something you have to deal with. Spectre, really good Ghost type. Hits really hard. If it gets a chance of setting up Nasty Plot, is also really dangerous. So that's something that opponents always have to consider with that. Zarude, I would say it's pretty mid grass typing, but it's alright for this team, I believe. Having that dark step with knockoff and lash out stuff like that is really nice for the team. For the low tier picks, I'm not a huge fan. Most of them are really slow. Rampardos obviously having that huge attack stat is really nice, but there's no definitive way to utilize that without setting up Trick Room. And I think the Trick Room users on this team is okay. They're not great, but they are okay. So if during the exhibition battles, Brave does get a chance of utilizing the Trick Room a little bit better, then I think Rampardos can definitely utilize that massive attack stat. Uh, The Frostmoth is interesting as well. Another good supporting piece. Has Y Guard, has Quiver Dance, so you can set up and sweep with Ice Beam, Bug Buzz, Hurricane, stuff like that. Quagsire, really good unaware Pokemon. Water Ground, always appreciated. Really super bulky. Stantler provides the Intimidate support. Good Eviolite Pokemon. Has Trick Room. Sidestep Bast, boost up its own defense, is always nice as well. And then Salazzle finally for that fake out pressure is nice as well. So, yeah. Oh, and Corviknight as well to provide that tailwind support. So, overall, the team is alright. I would definitely say it's one of those mid tier teams.
Okay. All right, and our absolute super final last team for our exhibition crew is the Welsh Warlord. Take it away, Ted.
Okay, so to my knowledge, this is the only sand team to be drafted, and it's an exhibition / scrap team,
Right.
which is super unfortunate, but it is what it is with that. I think Tyranitar Exegil, the return of these two guys, they're really strong together. I think. With no Dynamax, it's kind of hard to navigate with this because you can always change weather, like with either like Prankster or a faster Sunny Day or Rain Dance user. But I think just them by themselves together, they're super strong. Obviously, Exegil has Sandrush, so it can hit hard with those ground and steel type moves. It has decent coverage as well. And then Tyranitar obviously providing that Sandstream hits really hard with those also ground and dark type moves. So yeah, both like I said, both those two together are really strong. The Firewater Grass core is kind of less to be desired, but I can definitely see it. For Alligator, super strong with Sheer Force, Life Orb. Indeed, or not Indeed. Armor is super strong. No Psychic Terrain, unfortunately, but it can hit hard with Armor Cannon. And then Grottle is Grottle. Not really much with that. And then I look, and then I love this this little cheer squad with Plus1 Minun. Love it. Giratina and Darkrai and Zapdos, I think those three are interesting as well. Surprisingly, they kind of cover each other's weaknesses pretty well, minus Ice. But yeah, Darkrai is interesting. You can't really use Dark Void, but the special attacking side of it is super strong with Life Orb, Ice Beam, Dark Pulse, stuff like that with Focus Blast. Zapdos, Galar, Thunderous Kick, really strong, close combat, Brave Bird, Acrobatics, you can slap a scarf on it and just be really fast. And then Giratina Origin, really strong ghost typing, also having that dragon typing, so you can spam Phantom Force or Shadow Balls or Dragon Meteors, Dragon Claws, whatever you really want with it. And it can be utility mod as well with the Trick Room, I believe, and Will-O-Wisp. So yeah, really strong team overall. I would also say this is one of those mid-tier teams, even though it does have sand.
I just want to point out, Russell is better than you think. Shell Armor with Leech Seed Synthesis and Sandstone Trapping, it's good. Amnesia and Curse. Come on, give the Groffle some love.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure, why not?
All right, we're done. We're done talking about teams. So, in the interest of time, we just have we did some tiering. This is the part of the video most of you, pretty much all of you, want to go see. So this is the tier list from Head. I don't know if you want to say a few words about how you tiered the teams. Nothing too crazy.
So now going over all the teams now, I think I could switch around a few picks, or not a few picks, but a few of these teams. But I pretty much set in stone with most of these teams. Like the to be very like aware of these teams, like the middle of those teams. they're not necessarily bad teams. They're really good teams, but they're just so hard to justify to put them higher up than the almost playoff teams and the definite playoff teams. That I think those, even though those teams have strong restricted cores or have strong tag cores, I just think they're just mid. So I think those teams deserve to be there. Obviously, I think now a few of those teams could definitely move up. But I'm most definitely certain about the tier placements of the teams there.
All right, and then we have a tier list from Matrix.
Surely I'm going to make playoffs. Just want to put that out there. But no, in actuality, the way I've split it is like it was difficult to tier the teams. I feel like a lot of them were around the middle range, and that might be a byproduct of the tier list itself and the points available. So all the teams are going to start to feel a little bit like middle of the road with their own flaws and weaknesses. So I've done my best to try and separate them out as well as I could. I did have an extra tier there for two teams in particular I thought was really strong, but like it was literally 5 or 6 of the Mons and then nothing else. So, which you can see there in the super strong 6. I think it's so close. It's hard to really differentiate between them all.
Alright, and finally, this is my tier list. So I love how varied we are on some of these teams, especially like those super strong 6 that you mentioned, because I have one of those super strong 6 you put down as almost a top seed, and I have the other one surely heading to the playoffs. But that's mostly because I am a firm believer that Kyoko is a lot more busted than Caloric Shadow is, for sure. And I also really think that some of the teams in the middle tier could easily be moved up to the almost the top seed category. There might be 1 or 2 that I move down. I might be inclined to move the Kamalas down actually after actually reviewing this video, and possibly the Victinis as well. But for the most part, I think between the budgets and the points, I think teams did as best as they could. So a lot of the teams ended up being kind of middle of the pack for this draft. And with that being said, we are finally done. A 3-hour long exercise, but this will give you guys enough to chew on for a whole season, and hopefully time to make some changes to your team as we are just kind of getting underway for the start of this season. Do you guys have any final thoughts?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I know it was a long time, but I really enjoyed spending time on each of the teams and talking through my thoughts on them for a change. It's been a while since I've done a power rankings.
Yeah, I think I'm just really excited to see all the teams, how they turn out. Obviously, we could definitely be wrong about certain teams. Others could definitely succeed, and others won't succeed. So, yeah, it's just all about how each team takes the power rankings to heart, and yeah, super excited to see what happens during the season.
I definitely think this has been one of the closest power rankings I've ever done. I wouldn't even say the power rankings. It's just rather a review of the draft. Like all the teams were so close in their power level.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that was kind of why I opted for a tier list style versus like a numerical ranking, because I think it would have been a lot more challenging, at least for me, to like the difference between maybe like for a top ranked seed 1 and the second team might have been like literally maybe like nitpicking at that point. And I think in this format, when you consider the power level is so high and the budget was a bit frugal, that I think nitpicking on in that manner would be a little bit challenging, even for me.
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
Alright, well, that being said, we are going to sign off. Matrix and Ted, it was great having you guys. Thank you for joining me for this season's Power Rankings, and for all of you guys who are out there competing, and Ted, of course, as well. Good luck, have fun in your season. Take care.
See ya.
See ya.